Hey there, and welcome to Beyond the Veil. I'm here to help you drift off into a peaceful sleep, offering soothing stories and gentle guidance. Before we settle into dreamland, let me know in the comments, which country are you from? And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more restful nights.
Echoes of Havenwood. Welcome back to Forgotten Lore, where we exhume the enigmas time tries to bury. I'm your host, Amelia Hayes, and tonight, we descend into Havenwood, Pennsylvania, a locale where clandestine truths grip the ancient trees like ivy. The signature podcast chime receded, giving way to Amelia's deliberate delivery. Our focus, the perplexing vanishing of Sarah Jenkins. A mournful piano chord resonated, a stark counterpoint to Amelia's composed narration. July 17, 2004. The air hung heavy, thick with humidity, punctuated by the percussive onslaught of a summer squall. 16-year-old Sarah was minding 8-year-old twins, Lily and Daisy Carter, in their sprawling Victorian on Hemlock Lane. Their parents, the Carters, were at a charity gala downtown. They anticipated being home well before midnight. The piano swelled, then softened, revealing a snippet from an old broadcast. The spectral image of an anxious reporter standing before the Carter residence flickered into audibility. Authorities have initiated a comprehensive search for Sarah Jenkins. The storm caused a power outage, and officials suspect Ms. Jenkins may have become disoriented. Search parties are combing the surrounding woods, but thus far, there are no leads. The report ceased abruptly, replaced by the sound of rain and distant rumbles. Amelia's voice returned, hushed and distinct. But Sarah didn't simply wander off. That's the accepted narrative, murmured in hushed tones throughout Havenwood for 2 decades, yet the reality, as so frequently occurs, is significantly more layered, profoundly more disturbing. A longer pause, charged with implication, then, a sigh. What distinguishes Sarah Jenkins' disappearance, transforming it from a localized heartbreak into a persistent, chilling puzzle, is the videotape. The Carters, diligent documenters of their daughters' lives, had placed a camera in the twins' room. Trained on their cribs, equipped with night vision and sound activation, it was meant to capture charming milestones, first utterances, perhaps a glimpse of them sleepwalking. Instead, it recorded something far more menacing. Static crackled, succeeded by a brief, fragmented audio clip of children giggling. Amelia continued, a hint of undisguised emotion coloring her tone. The footage is fractured, distorted, yet undeniably unsettling. In the hours preceding the blackout, the camera shows the twins sleeping peacefully. Then, at approximately 11:47 p.m., a shape materializes in the corridor, just outside the nursery door. While the resolution is poor, the image blurred, it's unmistakably a human form, standing motionless, observing. A dramatic surge of strings heightened the disturbing revelation. Moments later, the screen goes blank. Upon their return, the Carters found a silent house, the twins sound asleep, but Sarah had vanished. The front entrance was unlocked, and the rear door was slightly ajar. Amelia cleared her throat. The police investigation yielded nothing. No indication of forced entry, no witnesses surfaced, no ransom demands were made. Sarah Jenkins simply evaporated into the tempest. The file grew cold, another unsolved case languishing in the archives of the Havenwood Police Department. Another pause, the silence amplifying the story's weight. But this isn't simply a case to me. This isn't just another narrative to dissect. This is personal. The piano music ceased entirely, leaving only Amelia's voice, exposed and fragile. My name is Amelia Hayes, and Havenwood is my hometown. I knew Sarah Jenkins. She was, a few years my senior, a kind face at the local market, the girl with an ever-present smile. She embodied everything I aspired to be at 16, self-assured, compassionate, possessing an aura that drew people near. Amelia's voice lowered to a near whisper. I recall the day she disappeared. The storm was apocalyptic. An oppressive darkness enshrouded the town, broken only by flashes of lightning that split the heavens. I remember the dread, the uncertainty, the premonition that something awful had occurred, and then, the subsequent day, the news arrived: Sarah was gone. A sharp, audible inhale. I departed Havenwood soon after. I couldn't remain there any longer. The specter of her disappearance cast a pall over everything, poisoning the familiar streets, the friendly faces. It was as if the town itself was holding its breath, anticipating some event to shatter the silence. The sound of rain returned, gentler now, almost mournful. For years, I attempted to forget Havenwood, to bury the memories, to convince myself it was merely another small town harboring its secrets, but some narratives refuse oblivion, some mysteries demand resolution, and certain ghosts simply resist burial. Amelia's voice hardened, vulnerability giving way to determination. 20 years is ample. It's time to return to Havenwood, time to confront the shadows, to unearth the secrets, and to finally uncover the truth of what became of Sarah Jenkins. The podcast's opening theme swelled, signaling the segment's conclusion. Join me next week as we delve deeper into the evidence, interview key figures, and explore the dark heart of Havenwood. This is Forgotten Lore, and the truth awaits. Stormy memories. The rain hammered against the windows of Emily Campbell's office, a relentless percussion that seemed to amplify the tension humming in the small room. Amelia settled into the plush armchair, notebook open on her lap. Emily, perched on the edge of her own chair, watched the storm with an unnerving stillness. A half-finished sketch lay face down on her desk. Thank you for agreeing to this, Emily, Amelia began, the whir of her digital recorder a subtle counterpoint to the storm's fury. I know this can't be easy. Emily finally turned, her gaze direct, almost too knowing. It isn't, but if talking helps anyone, then it's worth it. Her voice was soft, laced with a weariness that belied her youthful appearance. Let's start with that night, Amelia suggested gently. The night Sarah disappeared, what do you remember? Emily closed her eyes, a faint tremor running through her. The storm seemed to intensify, as if mirroring the turmoil within her. Flashes, she whispered. Just flashes. The storm, of course. It was violent. The power kept going out. Sarah was trying to keep us calm. I remember her singing. What song? Emily frowned, struggling. Something old. A lullaby, maybe. I can't quite grasp it. She opened her eyes, a hint of frustration clouding their depths. It's like trying to catch smoke. Amelia leaned forward. And the figure in the hallway, on the tape? Emily flinched. I don't remember seeing anyone, but I remember fear. A bone deep, primal fear, like something was watching us. Did Sarah seem afraid? She tried not to show it. She was always so bright, even then, but I think she was scared too. She kept checking the locks on the windows and doors. Amelia paused, considering. Josh said he doesn't remember much either. Emily sighed, a small, defeated sound. Josh, he blocks things out, always has. He deals with things logically. Emotion is messy, irrational. He prefers science. Amelia packed up her equipment and said goodbye to Emily, stepping out into the downpour. The wind whipped her hair across her face as she walked towards the science faculty building. Josh's office was sterile and impersonal, filled with charts, diagrams, and a faint, metallic scent of lab equipment. He gestured towards a chair without looking up from his computer screen. Dr. Hayes, he said, his voice flat, devoid of inflection. Emily said you were coming. Thank you for your time, Dr. Campbell. Amelia sat down, pulling out her recorder again. I understand this is difficult for you. Josh finally glanced up, his eyes sharp and analytical. Difficult is a subjective term that I prefer to deal with facts, concrete evidence. Of course, Amelia replied. So, what facts do you recall about the night Sarah disappeared? He steepled his fingers, his gaze unwavering. I remember a storm, that a particularly severe one, that I remember the power going out, and I remember waking up the next morning to find Sarah gone. That's it. You don't remember seeing anyone, anything unusual? Josh shook his head firmly. No, and I find the suggestion of a spectral presence frankly absurd. There's no scientific basis for such claims. The video. Amelia started, but Josh cut her off. The video is grainy, unclear. It could be anything, shadows playing tricks on the lens. Pareidolia, the human brain is wired to find patterns, even where none exist. Amelia felt a surge of frustration. But the fear, Josh, the feeling that something was wrong, surely you remember that? He hesitated for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. I was 6 years old, Dr. Hayes. Children have active imaginations. Fear is a common emotion. Amelia pushed back. You were old enough to know something wasn't right, Josh, and to the best of your recollection, Sarah was acting nervous, correct? Perhaps she was, Josh conceded stiffly. But that could have been due to the storm. Or any number of other factors. To attribute it to some supernatural entity is simply illogical. Later that night, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that both Emily and Josh were holding back. She lay in bed, the rhythmic drumming of the rain a constant reminder of the storm that had swallowed Sarah Jenkins. Flashback, Emily's perspective. The thunder was deafening. Emily, huddled under the covers, squeezed her eyes shut. Sarah was singing, her voice a fragile thread against the storm's roar. A lullaby Emily didn't recognize. A sudden crack of lightning illuminated the room, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. For a split second, Emily saw it, a figure standing in the hallway, just outside the nursery door, tall, dark, and impossibly still. Its face was obscured by shadow, but Emily felt its gaze, cold and piercing, boring into her soul. She gasped, burying her face in her pillow, convinced it was a nightmare. When she looked again, the figure was gone. But the fear remained, a chilling premonition that something terrible was about to happen. Amelia sat up in bed, her heart pounding. Emily's fragmented memories, Josh's rigid skepticism. Something wasn't adding up. The truth was buried deep, obscured by time, trauma, and perhaps something far more sinister, the last tape. The file felt heavier than expected. Amelia lugged the aged manila envelope, softened at the edges from countless hands, across the police archive. Above, fluorescent tubes buzzed, their cold light reflecting off rows of boxed files, silent chronicles of forgotten crimes and unsolved enigmas. She located the designated cubicle, a cramped, lightless space furnished with a lone metal desk and a jumpy monitor. Tucked among brittle evidence reports and faded memos, the videotape lay waiting. A legend. Campbell Residence, 2004, sprawled across its label in worn marker. It possessed a strange heft, a physical link to the night Sarah vanished. Amelia slipped it into the VCR. The machine sputtered to life after years of silence. Motes of dust pirouette in the monitor's beam as the screen flickered, resolving finally into a grainy tableau. The timestamp burned into the corner confirmed it. October 27, 2004. The image wavered, amateurishly shot. A brightly lit bedroom swam into view, festooned with Pop star posters and cartoon paraphernalia. Two small figures cavorted on twin beds, a youthful Emily, brimming with pigtails and restless energy, and Josh, already sporting a concentrated frown as he meticulously arranged his plastic dinosaurs. A young Sarah's voice, laced with warmth and patience, flowed from the speaker. "All right, you two, settle down, bedtime approaches." Emily squealed, flinging herself off the bed toward Sarah. "Just one more story, please." Josh, ever the pragmatist, added, "And the nightlight, the thunder's getting loud." The nascent storm murmured outside, a barely perceptible threat foreshadowing the night's terrors. Sarah knelt, smoothing Emily's flaxen hair. "Of course, sweetie. One story it is, and the nightlight stays. Anything to banish the beasties." She smiled, unguarded and genuine, a sight that twisted Amelia's gut with sorrow. This was more than a cold case, it was a stolen life. She nestled between the children, a dog-eared copy of Where the Wild Things Are, in hand. The camera, presumably perched on a dresser, held the scene captive. Amelia watched, mesmerized, as Sarah read with theatrical flair, her voice dipping and soaring with the narrative's currents. Emily snuggled close, eyes wide with enchantment, while Josh, even then, seemed to be dissecting the illustrations with critical scrutiny. The storm swelled, rain hammered the panes, and the distant grumble cracked into sharp thunderclaps. Sarah paused, her gaze flicking to the doorway. "Did you hear that?" she murmured, barely audible. Emily burrowed closer. "Just the storm, Sarah. It's all right." Josh, the stoic one, simply shrugged. "Probably just the house settling." Sarah resumed reading, though her eyes darted nervously toward the hallway. Amelia felt a coil tighten in her stomach. This was the crux, this was the instant. The camera shuddered, as though jostled. A prolonged, mournful creak echoed from beyond the room. All three heads snapped towards the open entrance, and then, it materialized. A dark form, indistinct and protean, filled the hallway beyond the threshold. Not a figure defined, but a nullity in the light, a warping of the shadows. It towered impossibly, its edges dissolving into the surrounding gloom. Amelia leaned closer to the screen, her pulse hammering. She could almost taste the frigidity radiating from the display. It was more than just the tape's decay. Something about the shape defied depiction, resisted understanding. Emily's scream sliced through the air, a keening shriek. Josh gasped, his eyes widening with a fear that belied his earlier cynicism. Sarah surged forward, her body a rampart against the unknown. "Stay behind me," she ordered, her voice shaking yet resolute. The shadowy entity remained still, a silent, baleful presence at the entrance. It neither advanced nor retreated. It simply existed. Then, the screen dissolved in a jarring cut to static. White noise erupted, a deafening roar that obliterated the storm. Amelia stared, riveted, at the snow-filled void. The tape kept rolling, recording nothing but static for the remaining minutes. She ejected the tape, her hands trembling like leaves in a storm. The image of that dark form was seared into her memory. It wasn't an optical illusion. It wasn't a child's invention. It was something else, something fundamentally wrong. Amelia closed her eyes, replaying the scene in her mind's eye, the entity, the children's terror, Sarah's valor, and then, the clipped segue to static. It was as if the tape itself had been defiled, its memory tainted by something malevolent. She opened her eyes. Gazing at the lifeless VCR, the department had ruled it a camera malfunction, a power surge from the tempest, but Amelia knew better. She knew the static wasn't just a technical hiccup. It was obfuscation. This last tape harbored more than just images. It held buried truths, secrets that Emily and Josh, even now, were striving to suppress, and Amelia was resolved to exhume them. She carefully returned the tape to its envelope, a steely determination solidifying her gaze. The exterior storm might have abated, but a new tempest was brewing, and she stood square in its path, enhanced shadows. Amelia clutched the evidence bag tighter as she walked into the sterile office of Marcus Thorne, video forensics. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burnt plastic, a testament to the technology humming within these walls. Marcus, a man whose rumpled appearance suggested he spent more time staring at screens than at mirrors, greeted her with a tired but welcoming smile. "Amelia, right? Come in, heard you had something interesting." He gestured towards a workstation dominated by multiple monitors displaying a chaotic array of waveforms and code. "Interesting is an understatement," Amelia replied, placing the videotape carefully on the table. "I believe this could hold the key to a missing person case from 2004. Marcus raised a skeptical eyebrow, but his eyes lit up with professional curiosity. "All right, let's see what you've got." He expertly loaded the tape into a specialized VCR, the whirring of the machine a nostalgic counterpoint to the digital symphony of his computers. As the grainy image flickered onto the central monitor, Amelia recounted the circumstances surrounding the tape's discovery and the chilling final moments of the recording. Marcus listened intently, his fingers dancing across the keyboard as he adjusted contrast and sharpness levels. "Okay, I see the problem," he muttered, pausing the video just before the appearance of the shadowy figure. "The resolution is abysmal, standard definition, heavily degraded, but we can work with this." He initiated a series of complex algorithms, lines of code scrolling across the screen like arcane symbols. The room hummed with the processing power being unleashed. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Amelia watched, her heart pounding in anticipation. Marcus occasionally paused to make minute adjustments, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm running a deblurring filter now," he explained, followed by a frame interpolation. "This should give us a slightly clearer picture, but don't expect miracles." Finally, after what felt like an age, the enhanced image appeared on the screen. It was still grainy and indistinct, but the shadowy figure in the hallway was now marginally more defined. Amelia gasped. "Good God," she breathed. The figure was tall, impossibly tall, its form vaguely humanoid but distorted. Where a face should be, there was only a swirling vortex of darkness. Its limbs were elongated and spindly, ending in what looked like wickedly sharp claws. But the most disturbing detail was the way the shadows seemed to cling to it, not cast by it. They writhed and pulsed, as if the darkness itself was alive. "That's unsettling," Marcus admitted, his usual professional detachment momentarily wavering. "I've seen a lot of messed up stuff in this line of work, but this is different." Amelia pointed to the swirling vortex where the face should be. "Can you enhance that further? Is there anything discernible?" Marcus zoomed in on the area, running another series of filters. The vortex became a kaleidoscope of swirling gray and black, but no recognizable features emerged. "I'm afraid not," he said, shaking his head. "It's just absence. A complete void." "What do you think it is?" Amelia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted. "Honestly, it defies any logical explanation. It could be a deliberate manipulation of the footage, but the way the shadows interact with the figure, that's not something you can easily fake, even with today's technology, and back in 2004, it would be nearly impossible." "So, what are you saying?" He sighed. "I'm saying that either someone went to extraordinary lengths to create a very convincing hoax, or we're looking at something that shouldn't exist." Amelia shivered, despite the warmth of the office. "Could it be a person? Someone in a costume?" Marcus shook his head. "No, the proportions are all wrong, and that void, where the face should be, no mask could create that effect. Besides, even with the enhanced image, it's clear that the shadows are behaving, unnaturally that they're almost feeding it. Amelia's mind raced, the happy family scene, the sudden terror, the static. Sarah Campbell had seen this thing. Had she been running from it? Had it taken her? The weight of unanswered questions pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've given me something to think about." As she left the office, the image of the shadowy figure burned into her mind. The enhanced details, instead of providing clarity, had only deepened the mystery, transforming a disturbing anomaly into a terrifying possibility. Amelia knew, with a chilling certainty, that she was no longer just investigating a missing person case. She was chasing something far more sinister, the secret boyfriend. The scent of aged paper, a dry and brittle fragrance, assailed Amelia as she turned the pages of Northwood High's 2004 yearbook. Sarah's senior portrait smiled blandly back, her expression almost painfully unremarkable. A stark contrast to the twisted visage Marcus had unearthed from the videotape, recording hinting at unspeakable horrors. Amelia's fingertip lingered on the printed name. Sarah Elizabeth Hayes. A name now synonymous with local tragedy, an unsolved riddle haunting bedtime stories, and fueling speculation over coffee at the diner. A photograph wasn't enough. She craved understanding, yearned to know the living girl obscured by the cold case file. Her quest began with those who once shared her hallways, hoping to find a spark of truth in their recollections. Initial inquiries proved frustratingly fruitless. Courteous condolences bookend shallow memories. Sarah, the sweet girl, the quiet one, always smiling. No substance, no revealing insights, just a cardboard cutout. Amelia felt frustration gnawing at her, the disheartening sensation of facing a dead end. A fissure finally appeared when she interviewed Lisa Peterson, a former acquaintance who'd orbited Sarah's periphery, now a barista at a hip downtown coffee shop, sporting a shock of violet in her blonde locks. Lisa paused noticeably at Sarah's name. "Sarah. Wow. That's ancient history," Lisa murmured, expertly coaxing artful swirls into a latte. "What happened was just terrible. Were you close?" Amelia prompted, injecting a lightness into her voice. Lisa shrugged, the gesture non-committal. "Not really, shared a couple classes, that's it, but there were whispers, you know." Amelia perked up, a thrill of anticipation coursing through her. "Whispers?" Lisa darted a glance around the bustling cafe, her voice dropping. "Yeah, about a boyfriend. Her folks were seriously not fans, apparently." "A boyfriend that never surfaced in the official investigation." Amelia's brow creased in disbelief. How could such a detail be overlooked? "Because it was kept hush-hush," Lisa breathed, her tone conspiratorial. "Daniel, I think his name was. No last name I recall, not from Northwood either, lived out in the sticks, maybe the next town over. He was different. A real outsider. People said he was bad news." A pulse quickened in Amelia's throat. A clandestine romance. An external connection, parental disapproval. This was a potential pathway, a fragile thread to grasp. "Did you ever meet him?" Lisa shook her head, the violet streak in her hair catching the light. "Nah, just saw them a couple times, sneaking around after school, behind the gymnasium, mostly. He seemed intense, like he was completely fixated on her, almost possessive." Possessive, the word reverberated, heavy with ominous meaning. Amelia's mind raced, piecing together the fragments. A secret love, parental opposition, a storm-swept disappearance. Could Daniel have been a player? Could he be responsible for Sarah's fate? "Anything else you remember?" Amelia pressed, her voice taut. "Anything at all." Lisa gnawed on her lip, her forehead furrowed in thought. "He always wore this strange pendant, some kind of stone, I think, dark, almost obsidian, and eyes, those really piercing eyes, like he was staring straight into your soul." An obsidian pendant. A detail that resonated. a potential keystone in a decades-old mystery. Amelia mentally flagged it, resolving to meticulously re-examine Sarah's personal effects, searching for any mention of the necklace. The dark stone. Sarah's parents, she suspected, would remain ignorant of his existence. Leaving the coffee shop, Amelia felt a renewed sense of resolve ignite within her. The investigation had veered sharply, leading her down an unforeseen path. The videotape had suggested the supernatural, forces beyond human comprehension, but the existence of a clandestine boyfriend, someone with potential motivation and a shadowed past, couldn't be dismissed. Was Daniel a false lead, a distraction from the true terror lurking just beyond sight, or was he a crucial component, the key to unlocking the enigma of Sarah's vanishing? As she drove toward her childhood home, storm clouds massed overhead, mirroring the turmoil churning within her. She had a name. A description. A possible suspect. Now, all that remained was to locate him, and hope that time hadn't silenced him forever, living under a new name. The digital echoes of Daniel's past proved faint and distorted. For 2 days, Amelia delved into the internet's forgotten corners, defunct message boards, ghosted social media profiles, her face illuminated by the spectral glow of her laptop screen in the darkened room. Then, nearing exhaustion on the second night, she struck gold, a comment on a photography forum, posted long after Sarah's vanishing. The user, Obsidian_lens, a blatant reference to his signature pendant, grumbled about sourcing obscure photographic chemicals in a backwater town, listing Harmony Creek, Oregon as his location. A direct search for Daniel in Harmony Creek yielded nothing, yet a subtle alteration, Danny Riles, emerged as a strong contender. Online records showed Riles had relocated to Harmony Creek just over a year after Sarah disappeared. The coincidence screamed of hidden connections. The address led to a secluded cabin on the town's periphery, swallowed by a dense forest of towering pines. Amelia drove there the following morning, the rented SUV's underbelly protesting against the rough gravel road. The air held a sharp bite, scented with moist earth and the invigorating fragrance of pine. The cabin, as she neared, seemed to soak up the surrounding light, its aged timbers a somber contrast to the vibrant foliage. Parking a short distance away, she switched off the ignition, letting the forest's profound silence envelop her. Inhaling deeply, she exited the vehicle and approached the cabin, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The door, painted a time-worn blue, featured a modest brass knocker. Hesitation tugged at Amelia, a knot of unease tightening in her gut. Raising her hand, she rapped on the wood. Moments later, the door groaned open, revealing a man both recognizable and profoundly altered. The familiar intensity remained, carved into the lines bracketing his eyes, but the youthful ardor had been supplanted by a wary reserve. His dark hair was now threaded with silver, gathered into a loose knot. That he wore a faded flannel shirt and well-worn denim jeans. "Danny Riles?" Amelia inquired, her voice steady despite the subtle tremor within. He blinked, his gaze sharp and assessing. "Who's asking?" "My name is Amelia Hayes. I'm looking into the disappearance of Sarah Hayes." The effect was instantaneous. Color drained from his face, etching deeper lines around his eyes. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple prominent. "Sarah Hayes? That's ancient history." "Indeed. I'd appreciate the chance to pose a few questions about her." He faltered, then reluctantly conceded, stepping back to grant her passage. "I suppose I can spare a few minutes." The cabin's interior was minimally adorned, containing a solitary armchair, a crude wooden table, and a bookshelf overflowing with well-thumbed paperbacks. A wood-burning stove occupied one corner, emitting a gentle heat. The atmosphere carried the scent of cedar and antique books. Amelia perched on the armchair's edge, striving to project an unthreatening demeanor. "You knew Sarah, didn't you, Daniel?" He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding eye contact. I knew a lot of people back then that IT was a lifetime ago.my memory isn't what it once was. You were more than merely acquainted, Daniel, you were her boyfriend. He finally looked at her, his expression a blend of defiance and apprehension. Look, I was just a kid that we hung around a bit, nothing serious. Sarah's friends portrayed you as fiercely intense, almost obsessive. He scoffed. Gossip, adolescent drama. Don't believe everything you hear. You wore an obsidian pendant, they claimed you never took it off. Amelia scrutinized him that he glanced down at his chest, then back at her, a flash of disquiet in his gaze. I wore all sorts of things back then. Where were you the night Sarah vanished, Daniel? He rose abruptly, pacing the confined space. I told the cops everything back then, that I was at home alone, that it was a stormy night, I was immersed in a book. Did you ever visit the Hayes residence that night? No, absolutely not, why would I? His voice gained volume, cracking slightly. Sarah's parents disapproved of you, didn't they? Did you quarrel with her about it? Listen, I don't know what you're driving at, but I had absolutely nothing to do with Sarah's disappearance. That I liked Sarah, that I would never have harmed her. He ceased his pacing and fixed her with a stare. This is dredging up old wounds, and frankly, I don't see what any of this concerns you. Amelia got to her feet, her gaze unwavering. Someone witnessed something on a videotape, just before Sarah disappeared. She let the declaration resonate. Someone standing in the hallway. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. A videotape? I know nothing about that. Thank you for your time, Mr. Riles. Amelia turned to leave, her thoughts accelerating. She was certain he was lying, she could sense it in her bones, but what secrets was he guarding? Havenwood's lore. The scent of aged paper and dust motes thick in the air greeted Amelia as she stepped into the Havenwood Historical Society. It was a small, unassuming building, tucked away on a side street, easily missed if you weren't looking for it. Inside, overflowing bookshelves lined the walls, punctuated by glass display cases filled with faded photographs and antique tools. A woman with a severe bun and thick-rimmed glasses sat behind a large oak desk, her eyes magnified to an unsettling degree as she peered over the top of them. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I'm looking for information about local history, specifically folklore and legends," Amelia replied, offering a polite smile. "Anything relating to the woods around Havenwood?" The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "The woods? Well, there are a few tales, mostly just old wives' tales, you understand." She paused, tapping a pen against a stack of papers. "What exactly are you interested in?" Amelia hesitated. "Anything to do with malevolent entities or strange occurrences, particularly during storms." The woman's gaze sharpened. "Now why would you be wanting to know about that?" "Just research," Amelia said, sidestepping the question. "I'm a writer." It wasn't a complete lie, the woman seemed to accept this, albeit reluctantly. "Well, most of what you'll find is in the archives, back room, second shelf from the left. There's a collection of newspaper clippings and transcribed oral histories. Be careful though, some of that paper is older than me, practically." Amelia thanked her and headed to the back room. The air grew noticeably cooler, a damp chill clinging to the walls. The shelves were crammed with files and boxes, the labels handwritten in faded ink. After a few minutes of searching, she found the section marked Folklore and Legends. She pulled out a thick file and carried it to a small table by the window. Sunlight streamed through the dusty glass, illuminating the brittle pages. The first few articles were mundane, accounts of lost hikers and lumberjack accidents, but as she delved deeper, a darker thread began to emerge. An article from 1932 described a series of unexplained disappearances in the Havenwood woods during a particularly violent thunderstorm. The victims were mostly children, and the article mentioned whispers of a shadow in the trees seen just before they vanished. Another clipping, from 1957, detailed a local farmer's account of a creature of pure darkness that stalked his fields during stormy nights, leaving behind only withered crops and terrified livestock. The most disturbing piece was a transcribed interview with an elderly woman named Agnes, conducted in the late 1970s. Agnes spoke of an ancient entity known as the Storm Weaver, a being of immense power that thrived on fear and chaos. She claimed it resided deep within the woods, its presence strongest during thunderstorms, when it could feed on the electrical energy and the terror of those caught in its path. Agnes warned that the Storm Weaver could manifest in different forms, often appearing as a shadowy figure or a distorted reflection of one's own fears. The interview ended abruptly with Agnes refusing to speak further, claiming she had already said too much and feared retribution. A shiver ran down Amelia's spine. She closed the file, her mind reeling. Coincidence? Superstition? Or could there be some truth to these old stories? Leaving the Historical Society, Amelia decided to visit the Havenwood Library. Surely they would have more information, perhaps a local expert on Havenwood's history. The library was a modern building, a stark contrast to the Historical Society. Amelia approached the information desk and asked about local historians. The librarian, a young woman with bright pink hair, directed her to Professor Eldridge, a retired history professor who occasionally volunteered at the library. Amelia found Professor Eldridge in the local history section, surrounded by stacks of books. He was an elderly man with a kind face and twinkling eyes. "Can I help you, young lady?" he asked, adjusting his spectacles. Amelia explained her interest in Havenwood's folklore, mentioning the legends of a malevolent entity in the woods. Professor Eldridge's eyes widened slightly. "Ah, you've stumbled upon Havenwood's darker side, the Storm Weaver, you say? That's a very old story, passed down through generations. Most people dismiss it as fanciful nonsense, of course. But you don't." Amelia pressed that. He chuckled softly. "I'm a historian, Miss Hayes," Amelia supplied. "Miss Hayes, that I deal in facts, not fables. However, I've learned over the years that even the most outlandish legends often have a kernel of truth. There's always a reason why these stories persist." He paused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "The Storm Weaver legend is particularly interesting because it's so deeply rooted in the local landscape. The Havenwood woods have always been a place of mystery and fear. The storms here are particularly violent. You see that it's easy to imagine something sinister lurking within them." "Did anyone ever investigate these stories?" Amelia asked. Professor Eldridge sighed. "Not officially. There have been a few local ghost hunters over the years, but they never found anything conclusive. Most people prefer to ignore the legends, to pretend they don't exist. It's easier that way." "Easier, but not necessarily safer," Amelia murmured, thinking of Sarah and the terrifying image on the videotape. The stories, the fear, the storm, it was all starting to coalesce into something tangible, something menacing, something watching. The earbuds hissed static, a sibilant intrusion worming its way into Emily Campbell's inner ear. She adjusted the volume, a futile gesture. The grating sound vibrated against her skull. Havenwood Horrors, Amelia's podcast, recounted the story of Sarah Jenkins. Weeks she'd spent avoiding this, a deliberate act of self-preservation, but the pull of the past, a noxious cocktail of guilt and lingering questions from 2 decades ago, had finally proven too strong. Amelia's voice, smooth and practiced, broke through the noise. Police records indicate Sarah Jenkins was last seen by. Emily winced, a throbbing ache blooming behind her eyes. Sarah's face materialized in her mind, a youthful visage framed by raven curls, her smile possessing an almost desperate brightness, as if battling inner shadows. Emily, perhaps, had been too naive to recognize. 8 years old, Ben, her brother, just 6. Sarah, their dependable sitter, practically family, except for that night. That singular, dreadful night. A wave of queasiness washed over Emily. She killed the podcast, yanking out the earbuds. The sudden silence was a momentary bomb, quickly superseded by the cacophony of her own suppressed memories. The storm, not just rain, but a furious assault, battering the glass, wind that shrieked like a tormented spirit. The power died, plunging the house into near total eclipse, save for the ghostly glow of the emergency lantern Sarah had deployed. Sarah was on edge, constantly glancing towards the windows, her gaze darting nervously. "Just a storm, Em," she'd reassured, her voice tight, but beneath the words, Emily sensed a deeper, nameless fear. She restarted the podcast, Amelia's narration filling the cramped space of her apartment, perched above the bakery, the air thick with the comforting aroma of baking bread. Emily Campbell, one of the children in Sarah's care that evening, kindly offered her recollections. Emily flinched. She tried to cooperate, but the interview felt like navigating a minefield of incomplete recollections and carefully crafted omissions. She couldn't articulate the pall of unease that had saturated the house that night. Or Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior. A vivid snapshot seared itself onto her consciousness. Sarah, in the hallway, illuminated by the flickering lamplight, her gaze fixed on something beyond Emily's perception, her face, drained of color, her eyes wide with a primal terror. She murmured something, a thread of sound swallowed by the storm. Emily wrestled with the memory, the words hovering just beyond her grasp, maddeningly elusive. She closed her eyes, focusing every ounce of her being on that fragmented image. Then, it surfaced. "Something watching." The phrase echoed in her mind, sending a glacial tendril down her spine. Something watching. That was it. Sarah's repetitive mantra. Emily's eyes flew open, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She snatched a pen and notepad from the cluttered desk, her hand trembling almost uncontrollably. She had to give it form, to exorcise it from the depths of her memory. She began to sketch, tentatively at first, then with growing fervor. A spectral figure began to materialize on the page. Elongated and emaciated, with grotesque limbs and a visage that defied humanity, not a face, but a perverse distortion. Its eyes were hollow voids, radiating an emptiness that seeped into Emily's very soul. She didn't recall seeing it that night, not consciously, but as the image grew, her recollection crystallized, sharpened. She remembered an overwhelming sense of foreboding, of being observed, of a malevolent presence lurking just outside the boundaries of her awareness. The entity was positioned in the hallway, just beyond her bedroom door, its form indistinct in the gloom, yet its presence undeniable. She burrowed beneath the covers, squeezing her eyes shut, offering a silent plea for it to vanish. When she finally dared to peek, it was gone, but Sarah had vanished, too. Emily stared at the drawing, her breath caught in her throat. Merely a sketch, a crude depiction of a nightmarish echo, yet it felt palpably real. Terrifyingly real. It felt like a missing piece, a key to unlocking the enigma of Sarah's disappearance. A profound certainty settled within her. Sarah hadn't simply run away, she had been abducted. By something that was watching. Electromagnetic anomaly. Josh Campbell's basement office hummed with the low thrum of servers. Monitors glowed, displaying complex weather models, swirling patterns of atmospheric pressure, and spectral readings that looked like abstract art. The air was thick with the scent of dust and ozone. Amelia felt a prickle of unease just stepping inside, a sense of being surrounded by unseen energy. "Sorry about the mess," Josh muttered, gesturing vaguely at the cluttered desk overflowing with cables, circuit boards, and empty energy drink cans, trying to keep this contained. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair, his eyes darting back to the central monitor. It's fascinating, really. Amelia perched on the edge of a folding chair, trying to decipher the screen. What is the storm, specifically? What happened at night? That I pulled historical weather data from every available source, local stations, NOAA archives, even amateur radio logs, and, well, there's an anomaly. He tapped the screen, highlighting a blip near the center of one of the displays. See this? It's a localized electromagnetic disturbance, off the charts, Amelia, and it's centered right around your house. Amelia's breath hitched. Electromagnetic disturbance, what does that even mean? Josh swiveled in his chair, finally giving her his full attention. Think of it like a ripple in the fabric of, well, electromagnetism. It's not a weather phenomenon, not exactly. It's like a surge of energy, a field disruption. I've seen similar readings near lightning strikes, but this was different, more contained, more focused. He turned back to the screen, manipulating the data with a practiced hand. It spiked just before the worst of the storm hit, held steady for maybe 20 minutes, then vanished as abruptly as it appeared, and the interesting thing, it only seems to show on this particular frequency range, almost like a targeted pulse. Amelia frowned. Targeted at what? Josh hesitated. I don't know, but I've never seen anything like it, not associated with a natural event, anyway. He glanced at Amelia, a strange mix of curiosity and apprehension in his eyes. It's almost like something generated it, intentionally. Amelia felt a chill crawl up her spine. So, you're saying something caused this? Something artificial? Not necessarily artificial, Josh corrected, his voice dropping to a near whisper. But, well, it's going to sound crazy. You know how much of this town is built on folklore and legends, right? The Storm Weaver. Amelia's stomach clenched. She remembered whispers from her childhood, hushed stories told around campfires, tales of a malevolent entity that controlled the weather, feeding off fear and despair. She had dismissed them as silly superstitions then, but now. You don't think? She began, but the words caught in her throat. Josh shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant, but his eyes betrayed him. I'm just saying, there are parallels. The legends describe the Storm Weaver as being able to manipulate the elements, to create storms seemingly out of thin air. To feed on the energy of fear, and there are accounts of disturbances, strange lights, electrical anomalies associated with its presence. He paused, watching Amelia's reaction. It's just a story, of course. A story Sarah used to tell me, Amelia said, her voice barely audible. She used to scare me with it. Josh looked away, fidgeting with a pen on his desk. Look, I'm not saying it's real. I'm a scientist. I deal with data, but the data, it's suggestive. It makes you wonder. He pointed to another waveform. Look at this. It repeats every 17 minutes like clockwork. I pulled up historical weather data, and this pattern repeats 20 years ago and 20 years before that. It might coincide with other disappearances or deaths associated with storms. Amelia stood up, pacing the cramped space, the weight of the past, of Sarah's disappearance, of the unsettling videotape, and now this electromagnetic anomaly, pressed down on her. What do we do with this? I don't know, Josh admitted. I can keep digging, try to find other instances of this kind of energy signature, see if there's any connection to other events. He hesitated. But Amelia, be careful. If there's something out there, something that can generate this kind of energy, it's not something you want to mess with. He met her gaze, his expression serious. "I've never seen anything like this before, and frankly, it scares me." Amelia nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. She thought back to Daniel/Danny, the boyfriend, and wondered what role he may have played in Sarah's disappearance. "Josh, I need you to look into Daniel O'Connell, Sarah's boyfriend. I thought you ruled him out." Amelia shook her head. "Something doesn't add up that I need to know everything about him." Josh nodded. "I'll see what I can find, but Amelia, promise me you'll be careful." Amelia nodded, but her mind was already racing. The storm weaver, electromagnetic anomalies, a secretive boyfriend. The pieces were starting to come together, painting a picture far more terrifying than she could have ever imagined, and she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost, guilt and confession. Amelia nearly leaped out of her seat when her phone blared, the jarring ringtone shattering the strained quiet of her living room. The display showed an unknown number. Nodding her gut with apprehension, she almost ignored it, but a persistent unease compelled her to answer. "Hello?" she managed, her voice a bare thread. A voice, raspy and thick with suppressed emotion, answered. "Amelia, it's Daniel O'Connell." Amelia's fingers tightened around the device. Daniel. Sarah's Daniel, the very man Josh was investigating. "Daniel, what do you want?" She struggled to keep her tone even, but an involuntary quiver gave her away. I need to see you, face to face." His voice cracked with the weight of his words. "Please, it concerns Sarah." Amelia wavered. A solitary meeting felt dangerous, yet she couldn't squander this opportunity. This could be the key she sought. "Where?" "The old mill, just outside town, by the river. It's remote, I know, but please, just you and me." She weighed the location. Isolated, yes, but with enough open ground to prevent outright entrapment. "Give me an hour," she conceded, ending the call with her pulse hammering in her chest. The drive to the dilapidated mill seemed interminable. The sun dipped lower, painting the twisting rural route with lengthy, spectral shadows. Amelia compulsively checked her rearview mirror, haunted by the feeling of unseen eyes boring into her. She dissected the call with Daniel, attempting to discern motive from timbre. Was this a prelude to confession, or a cleverly laid snare? The mill reared into view, a gaunt framework of decaying timber and corroded metal against the dimming canvas of the sky. The river gurgled and surged nearby, a constant, mournful undertone. Daniel was already present, slouched against a crumbling stone facade, head dipped low. He looked up as she approached, his visage haggard, his eyes bloodshot and ringed with dark circles. Time had not been kind. The young man she recalled from high school, the object of Sarah's girlish affections, had vanished, supplanted by a man scarred by worry and remorse. "Thanks for coming," he croaked, his voice gravelly. Amelia folded her arms, feigning a confidence she didn't possess. "What did you want to discuss, Daniel?" He raked a hand through thinning strands, averting his gaze. "That night, the night Sarah vanished, we quarreled." The admission hung heavy, a palpable presence in the twilight air. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. "Quarreled, about what?" He finally met her gaze, and Amelia glimpsed a flicker of raw anguish within its depths. "About the Jenkins place. She refused to babysit there any longer." "Why?" Amelia pressed, her tone sharpened with urgency. "She said that things were amiss, unsettling." He shuddered, clutching his jacket tighter around himself. "She claimed to hear sounds, murmurs, catching glimpses of shadows from the corner of her eye. She said the children were acting strange too, especially little Billy. He kept muttering about the shadow man in the storm. A chill spread through Amelia's veins. The shadow man in the storm. Daniel nodded miserably. She was petrified, Amelia, utterly petrified. She pleaded with me to tell her to quit, to forbid her from returning, but we were strapped for cash. I was only working part-time, scarcely enough to pay the bills. She was trying to contribute that I dismissed her fears, telling her it was just her imagination. He stifled a sob. God, how I regret that. A wave of anger washed over Amelia, mingled with a strange, unsettling validation. Sarah hadn't simply disappeared, she had been afraid of something connected to the Jenkins residence, something otherworldly. Did she elaborate? Amelia probed, her voice barely audible. Any details about what she saw, or what she heard? Daniel shook his head, his eyes swimming with regret. Only that it felt wrong, unnatural. She said it was as though the house was alive, and that something was observing her. He paused, then added, barely above a whisper, she confided that she felt as though the storm was beckoning to her. That evening, before she left for the Jenkins, she kept fixating on the ominous clouds. She insisted she could almost hear someone calling her name on the wind. The wind picked up around them, a mournful cry that mirrored Sarah's dread. Amelia shivered. Despite herself, the storm weaver, could the legend be true? Could it have been the catalyst for Sarah's terror? Why reveal this now, Daniel? Amelia asked, her voice strained. After all these years. He met her gaze, his eyes brimming with supplication. Because I can no longer bear the burden of guilt that I should have heeded her warnings, that I should have shielded her. Perhaps had I done so, she would still be here. He lowered his head, tears coursing down his weathered face. I hoped that, perhaps knowing the truth, that it would help you to understand, that it would help you to find her, or at least to uncover her fate. The weight of his confession settled heavily upon Amelia, suffocating her. She had arrived seeking answers, and she had found them, but they were more terrifying than her darkest imaginings. Sarah hadn't simply vanished. She had been taken, consumed by something dark, something entwined with the storm, something ancient and malevolent that stalked the shadows of Havenwood, and Amelia now stood squarely in its path, whispering pines. Emily perched on the edge of her bed, earbuds in, listening to a true crime podcast dissecting Sarah Jenkins' disappearance. The host's voice, a clinical monotone, recounted the basic facts: the storm, the missing girl, the grainy video. Emily shivered, pulling the blanket tighter. She'd always dismissed it as local sensationalism, but now, fragments of memories, disjointed and unnerving, were surfacing. That a flickering gas lamp, the smell of pine needles, a low, guttural hum. Josh, hunched over his laptop at the desk, chewed on his thumbnail, eyes glued to a chaotic mess of data. Another spike, he muttered, more to himself than Emily. Another what? Amelia asked, stepping into the room. She looked exhausted, the shadows under her eyes deeper than usual. The meeting with Daniel had clearly taken its toll. Electromagnetic activity, Josh explained, swiveling his chair. It's faint, intermittent, but it's been consistently higher since the anniversary of Sarah's disappearance, and it centered somewhere west of town. He pointed to a swirling anomaly on the screen. I've cross-referenced it with weather patterns from that night in 2004, and a few other significant storms since then. There's a correlation. Emily pulled out one earbud. A correlation to what? To the storms, and well, to Sarah, Josh said, his voice laced with a nervousness that sent a chill down Amelia's spine. That night, the storm arrived earlier than predicted. Rain lashed against the windows, mimicking the relentless drumming in Amelia's head. She tossed and turned, unable to sleep, haunted by Daniel's whispered confession and the image of Sarah, paralyzed with fear. Sometime after midnight, a floorboard creaked outside her door. Amelia sat up, heart pounding. She slipped out of bed. Reaching for the flashlight on the bedside table, the house was plunged in an oppressive darkness, punctuated only by the flashes of lightning. She found Emily in the living room, standing before an easel, her eyes wide and unfocused. The eye in her hand, she clutched a charcoal stick, furiously sketching on a large canvas. Amelia approached cautiously. The drawing was disturbing, twisted, skeletal trees clawed at a sky filled with swirling, malevolent shapes. A dark figure, vaguely humanoid, loomed in the background, its form indistinct but undeniably menacing. It was unsettlingly familiar. "Emily?" Amelia whispered, reaching out to touch her shoulder. Emily didn't react. She continued to draw, her hand moving with a feverish energy. The charcoal scraped harshly against the canvas, a sound that grated on Amelia's nerves. Josh stumbled into the room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" he mumbled, then his eyes landed on the drawing. He paled. That's Whispering Pines." Emily stopped drawing abruptly. The charcoal fell from her hand, clattering on the floor. She blinked, confusion clouding her eyes. What am I doing?" The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a trail of broken branches and a heavy, oppressive silence. "Whispering Pines," Amelia repeated, tracing the outline of one of the twisted trees in Emily's drawing. "That's where the anomaly is strongest, according to Josh's data." Josh nodded, his face grim. It's mentioned in the old stories, about the storm weaver. The legends say it dwells in places where the veil between worlds is thin, places touched by constant storms." "And?" Amelia prompted, though she already suspected what he was going to say. "And Whispering Pines is one of those places. The legends say the trees there whisper secrets to those who listen, or to those it chooses to whisper to." Emily shuddered, wrapping her arms around herself. "This is getting too weird. I don't like this." "Neither do I," Josh admitted. "But Emily's been sleepwalking, drawing things she couldn't possibly know, things from the legends, things Sarah mentioned, being afraid of the week she disappeared, according to her diary." Amelia clenched her fist. "We have to go there. We have to see what's happening at Whispering Pines." "Are you crazy?" Josh exclaimed. "It's a dangerous, isolated place, and another storm is brewing. Look." He pointed to the darkening sky. Amelia ignored him. "We go tonight, before the storm hits. If there's something out there, something connected to Sarah, we need to find it." She looked at Emily. "We do this for Sarah." Emily looked at the drawing, then at Amelia. A spark of determination flickered in her eyes, chasing away some of the fear. "Okay," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Okay, let's go to Whispering Pines. The Well of Secrets." A mournful cry resonated from the wind as it knifed through the bare boughs of the pines, each blast a brutal shove against their slickers. Amelia squinted against the deluge, the stinging rain blurring her vision as she struggled to keep pace with Emily, who navigated the tempest-tossed woods with an unsettling confidence. Behind them, Josh, his face bloodless in the flashlight's jittery glow, muttered about plummeting temperatures and the off-the-charts electromagnetic interference. "You positive about this?" Amelia yelled to be heard over the thunder's booming percussion. "It's intense." Emily didn't answer, her gaze locked ahead, Iris's dark pools. She was in that detached state again, her movements preternaturally smooth for someone traversing such treacherous ground. The very atmosphere seemed to hum, raising gooseflesh on Amelia's arms, her EMF readers off the charts. Josh shrieked, brandishing the device. The needle was buried in the crimson danger zone. "We have to get out of here." Emily halted abruptly, making Amelia stumble. They stood on the threshold of a small, unkempt clearing, the surrounding trees contorted into grotesque effigies by unseen pressures. At its heart, veiled by tenacious vines and decaying foliage, stood a well, not a picturesque wishing well from a greeting card. This was primal, fashioned from roughly hewn stones that seemed to devour light, exuding an aura of frigid menace. Its rotting wooden frame, cloaked in moss, resembled a gaping maw. Emily drifted toward the well, her hand extended as if tethered to an invisible cord. "It's here," she breathed, her voice a frail thread against the storm's fury. "It's always been here." Amelia exchanged a worried look with Josh. "Emily, are you all right? What do you see?" Emily remained unresponsive. She knelt by the well, her fingers tracing the cold, slick stones. Then, with a surge of unexpected strength, she tore away a dense curtain of vines, revealing a dark, bottomless abyss. The wind seemed to amplify, swirling around them in a vengeful dance. "Don't," Josh pleaded, lurching forward. "It's not safe." Ignoring him, Emily plunged her arm into the well, disappearing to the elbow. Amelia held her breath, her pulse a frantic drumbeat. A moment later, Emily withdrew her hand, clutching something small and gleaming. A locket. Recognition slammed into Amelia. It was Sarah's, the very locket she'd always worn, the one Amelia had coveted as a child, the parting gift before Sarah vanished. The one containing a picture of Sarah and their mother. "No." Amelia gasped, the implication striking her with stunning force. Sarah had been here, at this blighted well, on the night of her disappearance. As Amelia took the locket, a dizzying wave crashed over her, accompanied by a searing spike of pain in her skull. The electromagnetic field surged violently, the air heavy with static discharge. Josh cried out, clamping his hands over his ears. Then, she witnessed it. A shadow peeled itself from the well's inky depths, not a solid entity, but a warp in the fabric of reality, a shimmering distortion. Gradually, it solidified into a vaguely humanoid form, gaunt and impossibly elongated. Its limbs were stretched and skeletal, its head a smooth, featureless plane. The Storm Weaver. Primal terror seized Amelia's heart, more than mere fright, recognition, a dawning, horrific awareness of the entity that had stalked her nightmares, the being responsible for Sarah's abduction, the lurker in Whispering Pines shadows for generations. The shadowy effigy extended a long, bony arm towards them, and the wind ascended into a keening shriek. Rain intensified, blurring the world into a swirling vortex of monochrome. Josh's scream split the air. Emily stood transfixed, gazing at the being with mingled fear and fascination. Amelia, clutching Sarah's locket, stood firm, a spark of defiance igniting within her. "You," she whispered, her voice shaking but resolute, "you took her." The figure remained silent, but its presence was palpable. A malevolent force, a predator drawn to their vulnerability. The atmosphere crackled, threatening to overwhelm them, the static escalating into a thunderous crescendo. Amelia knew, with chilling certainty, that this was merely the overture. The Storm Weaver had been roused, and it would not relinquish them easily, confronting the darkness. The air tasted of lightning, a metallic tang on Emily's tongue. The Storm Weaver, an unstable cyclone of shadow struggling within a vaguely human frame, loomed. Emily gave a small cry, gripping Josh's arm. His fingers tightened around her hand, blood draining from his knuckles. "Josh, now." Amelia's shout barely pierced the gale clawing at them. Josh wrestled with the contraption strapped to his wrist, its display a maddening swirl of electromagnetic data, scavenged parts, half-baked theories, and a desperate faith in Amelia had birthed this device, a bulwark against the encroaching darkness of Havenwood's woods. He inhaled sharply, then triggered the machine. A keening shriek stabbed the air, ratcheting up into a crushing pressure. The Storm Weaver writhed, its shadowy edges dissolving and reforming as if fighting unseen bonds. That a subterranean growl erupted from it, vibrating through the earth. It's working. Josh yelled, his voice swallowed by the storm's fury and the device's scream. I'm disrupting its resonance, weakening its anchor to reality. Amelia advanced, her gaze riveted on the tormented entity. Fear still clawed, but determination burned hotter. Who are you? What is that thing? The growl twisted into a garbled echo of human speech. Insignificant, beyond your ken. You took Sarah, Amelia declared, her voice firm. You were there that night, the hallway, you were on the tape. The vortex shuddered, the shadowy figure gaining a semblance of solidity. Sarah, a focus. A conduit, willingly offered. A conduit for what? Amelia pressed. The storm's essence. She was receptive. A willing vessel, a chalice ripe for the draught. The entity's voice, though fractured, sharpened with chilling precision. She yearned for power. Josh tweaked the device's frequency. The storm weaver faltered, its form dissolving and reforming. He risked a fleeting glance at Amelia, his face ashen. I can't sustain this for long. It's adapting, learning. Amelia ignored him, her entire being focused on the entity. What have you done to her? Where is she? The storm weaver turned its attention to the well, its inky depths mirroring the swirling darkness within the entity. She is assimilated. A part of the storm's tapestry, forever bound. A wave of nausea slammed into Amelia. No, that's impossible. Sarah's radiant smile, her unfailing ability to soothe. Extinguished, imprisoned in that cursed well. She serves a grander purpose now, the entity hissed, its voice a glacial whisper. A vital strand in the storm's genesis. Genesis of what? Amelia demanded, her voice trembling now. The entity cocked its head, an unsettlingly human gesture. Something transcendent. The storm remembers, the storm craves. It extended a limb of shadow toward Amelia. And now, it remembers you. Amelia, behind you. Josh's warning was a split second too late. A tendril of raw energy erupted from the storm weaver, searing the ground where she had stood. Amelia stumbled, her palm finding purchase on a gnarled root. The agony was blinding, a brutal testament to the danger closing in. She scrambled up, her eyes locked on the creature. You're lying, she spat, steel returning to her voice. Sarah wouldn't want this, she wouldn't choose this fate. The storm weaver gave a grating laugh, a sound that vibrated in Amelia's marrow. Choice, an illusion, only the storm, only the intoxicating embrace of power. It advanced, its shadowy form swelling, a nightmare-given form. Josh frantically pushed his device to its breaking point. The whine escalated into a deafening shriek. The storm weaver roared in fury, its form dissolving and solidifying in chaotic bursts. Amelia knew time was running out. Josh couldn't maintain the disruption much longer, but what could she possibly do against such a formidable, malevolent force? Her gaze drifted to the well, the swirling abyss beckoning with its silent promise of oblivion. Sarah was in there, trapped, and Amelia would not abandon her. Drawing a ragged breath, she steeled her resolve. If Sarah is in there, she declared, her voice resonating with newfound strength, then I'm going in after her. The storm weaver tilted its head again, as if regarding a particularly amusing insect. A meaningless gesture. You cannot fathom the power that dwells within. You will be consumed without trace. Amelia ignored the taunts. She had a plan, a desperate gamble riding on fragile hope and a lifetime of shared memories. She just had to close the distance. Closure in Havenwood. Crimson and azure lights fractured into jagged patterns across the oak's ancient, knotted limbs beside the well. A ribbon of caution tape, that frail deterrent, circled the scene, holding back the growing knot of onlookers whose faces were starkly illuminated. Amelia stood slightly removed, with Josh, his visage reflecting a somber understanding that echoed the hollowness within her. His hand tightened around hers, an unspoken solace. "As I foretold," the storm weaver's voice, still resonating through the trees, held a taunting emptiness. She chose this conclusion. Amelia tuned it out. The arrival of the authorities, though a grim necessity, seemed to have lessened the entity's presence. Its pronouncements now resembled the impotent ravings of a trapped beast. Detective Davies, his face a roadmap of weariness, approached. "We're initiating the descent now, Ms. Hayes. Please remain behind the barrier." Amelia nodded, her throat constricted. The rescue team's specialized equipment seemed utterly insufficient against the age-old malevolence clinging to the place. The air itself thrummed with a palpable dread. Amelia watched as the first officer, secured by a robust cable, began his slow journey into the well's inky abyss. Time became viscous, each tick an eternity. The crowd's murmur faded to a distant drone, eclipsed by the frantic rhythm of Amelia's pulse. Josh's grip intensified. She knew, with dawning clarity, that this marked the finale, the closing of the search, the extinguishing of the last ember of hope for Sarah's survival. Then, a cry, muffled yet clear, ascended from the depths. A surge of activity seized the area around the well. Ropes strained, orders snapped. Amelia, breathless, observed as the rescuer surfaced, his expression grave. A brief consultation with Detective Davies, and the detective turned to address the spectators. His countenance ratified Amelia's darkest premonitions. A collective intake of breath swept through the crowd. The yellow tape now felt pathetically inadequate to contain the grief that saturated the atmosphere. Amelia's eyes closed, a solitary tear etching its path down her cheek. The resolution she'd yearned for had arrived, but it was a resolution steeped in sorrow and bereavement. Later, back in her childhood home, Amelia sat at her desk, the cold metal of her podcast microphone unresponsive beneath her fingertips. The Havenwood Herald podcast had unintentionally become a chronicle of Sarah's vanishing, a testament to the enduring sway of memory and the sinister secrets buried beneath the facade of this seemingly tranquil town. Emily, listening from her living room, felt an icy tendril slither down her spine. The details Amelia shared, the floor plan of the dilapidated Jenkins house, the children's games Sarah orchestrated, the disquieting sensation of observation, unlocked a floodgate of suppressed recollections. Fragments of that tempestuous night materialized, a spectral figure in the corridor, a softly sung lullaby, a stark, petrifying silence. Josh, hunched over his computer, monitored the inflow of data from his makeshift sensors. The electromagnetic disturbances near the well were peaking again, a frenzied cacophony of energy that seemed to mock their endeavors. He gazed at the deepening twilight sky, a coil of fear tightening in his gut. He yearned for Amelia to be finished, to flee Havenwood. He couldn't fathom her will to stay. Amelia cleared her throat, the sound magnified in the otherwise hushed room. "They discovered Sarah," she began, her voice heavy with emotion. "After all these years, they found her at the bottom of the well." She paused, composing herself. "This case has haunted Havenwood for 2 decades. It's woven into our local lore," a somber warning whispered in the shadows. But Sarah Jenkins wasn't just a ghost story. She was a vibrant young woman, brimming with life and dreams, who was unjustly taken from us. Amelia's gaze flickered towards a picture of Sarah taped to her monitor. Sarah's smile was eternally captured, a poignant reminder of the joy that had been extinguished. The Storm Weaver, as it's sometimes called, is a personification of the darkness that thrives in this town. It feeds upon fear, upon grief, upon long-forgotten memories. It preys on the susceptible, those who are adrift and abandoned. She continued, her voice gathering conviction. But shadow cannot exist in the absence of light, and the radiance of memory, the candor of truth, can penetrate even the deepest obscurity. That we must not forget Sarah, that we must remember all those lost to the darkness. Amelia inhaled deeply. This concludes my final episode for the Havenwood Herald podcast. That I returned to Havenwood seeking answers, searching for resolution, and in some ways, I found it, but the reality is, resolution isn't about erasure. It's about remembrance, about honoring the lives that were cut short, about striving to ensure that such atrocities never recur. She paused once more, her focus locked on Sarah's portrait. Rest in peace, Sarah, you will never be forgotten. Amelia reached out and silenced the microphone. The ensuing quiet was profound, broken only by the distant growl of thunder. The storm was gathering anew, a constant presence in Havenwood, and Amelia knew, with bone-chilling sureness, that the darkness would persist, biding its time for its next vulnerable target. The legends would live on. The name itself, Cannock Chase, whispers of ancient secrets, nestled in the heart of Staffordshire, England. It's a sprawling landscape of woodland, heathland, and rolling hills. By day, it's a haven for walkers, cyclists, and nature enthusiasts, drawn to its undeniable beauty. Sunlight filters through the dense canopy, dappling the forest floor in a mosaic of light and shadow. The air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Deer graze peacefully in clearings, and birdsong fills the air. It seems an idyllic escape from the hustle and bustle of modern life, but beneath this veneer of tranquility lies a palpable sense of unease. Cannock Chase has a history etched in tragedy and whispered tales of the paranormal. Its beauty is undeniably haunted. For centuries, the area has been a focal point for strange occurrences, attracting ghost hunters and those drawn to the unexplained. Local folklore speaks of restless spirits, phantom hounds, and unexplained lights flickering in the night. The land itself bears the scars of its past. Remnants of old coal mines, now overgrown with vegetation, stand as silent monuments to the lives lost in the depths below. Mining accidents were tragically common in the area's industrial past, and the stories of those who perished linger in the collective memory of the community. The chase also served as a military training ground during both world wars, and the echoes of wartime activities are said to resonate still, with some claiming to hear phantom gunfire or see spectral soldiers marching through the woods. This history of sorrow and hardship has arguably created a fertile ground for the paranormal. Many believe that the chase is a place where the veil between worlds is thin, where the spirits of the past are more easily able to manifest. The area has been investigated by numerous paranormal groups, all seeking to understand the strange phenomena that have been reported for generations. Adding to the area's macabre reputation is the chilling case of the Cannock Chase murders. In the 1960s, the remains of 3 young girls were discovered in shallow graves within the chase. The crimes shocked the nation and cast a dark shadow over the area, further cementing its reputation as a place of darkness and dread. While the perpetrator was eventually caught and convicted, the memory of those tragic events continues to haunt the chase. It's within this context of natural beauty intertwined with historical tragedy and paranormal lore that the legend of the black-eyed child takes root. The combination of a seemingly innocent landscape with the pervasive feeling of unease creates the perfect backdrop for such a terrifying tale. The stories of this spectral figure tap into our deepest fears, preying on our vulnerability and challenging our understanding of the world around us. The black-eyed child is not just a ghost story. It's a reflection of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most beautiful places. It is a legend born from the very soil of Cannock Chase, and it's within this atmosphere, thick with both natural beauty and a lingering sense of dread, that the first whispers of the black-eyed child began to circulate. These weren't the kinds of stories told around campfires for a cheap thrill. These were accounts shared in hushed tones, passed between locals who genuinely believed they had witnessed something inexplicable. The initial reports were fragmented, often dismissed as tricks of the light or overactive imaginations, but the similarities between them were too striking to ignore. the core elements remained consistent across multiple independent accounts. A young girl, estimated to be between 6 and 10 years old, with unnaturally pale skin, her most distinguishing and terrifying feature, eyes that were completely black, devoid of any white. She was said to appear suddenly, seemingly materializing from thin air within the wooded areas of Cannock Chase. What truly set these encounters apart was the overwhelming sense of dread that accompanied them. Witnesses described a feeling of intense unease, a primal fear that gripped them the moment they laid eyes on the child. It wasn't just a simple case of being startled, it was a deeper, more visceral reaction, as if something fundamentally wrong was present. The child's behavior was equally unsettling. She rarely spoke, and when she did, her voice was described as faint, almost a whisper. Often, she would simply stand silently, staring with those black, fathomless eyes. Some witnesses claimed she would ask for help, her voice filled with a chilling lack of emotion, while others said she would just stare, an unsettling invitation hanging in the air. The most terrifying aspect of these encounters was the child's sudden disappearance. As soon as someone attempted to approach her, she would vanish, seemingly into thin air. One moment she would be standing there, and the next, she would be gone, leaving behind only an unnerving silence and the lingering feeling of dread. No footprints, no sign of her passage, just the unsettling certainty that something unnatural had occurred. These initial reports remained largely confined to local circles, dismissed by outsiders as urban legends or products of the area's already heightened paranormal reputation. However, as more and more people came forward with similar stories, the legend of the black-eyed child began to gain traction, capturing the attention of paranormal investigators and those fascinated by the unexplained. The lack of any concrete evidence only fueled the mystery. There were no photographs, no video recordings, nothing to definitively prove that these encounters were anything more than figments of imagination. Yet, the consistency of the descriptions, the shared feelings of dread, and the sheer number of reported sightings made it difficult to dismiss the phenomenon entirely. The black-eyed child of Cannock Chase had become more than just a ghost story. It had become a modern-day legend, a chilling reminder that some mysteries may never be fully explained. To truly understand the chilling effect of the black-eyed child, one must hear the accounts of those who claim to have encountered her. These are not tales retold secondhand, but direct testimonies, raw with the lingering fear and bewilderment that such an encounter leaves behind. Let's begin with the story of a local jogger, a man named David, whose routine morning run transformed into a terrifying brush with the unexplained. David was a creature of habit. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, he would lace up his running shoes and head into Cannock Chase. He knew the trails like the back of his hand, the familiar sights and sounds a comforting prelude to the day ahead that he found solace in. The solitude of the woods, a chance to clear his head and connect with nature before the demands of his job took over. On this particular morning, the air was unusually still. A thick fog clung to the ground, shrouding the trees in a veil of mystery. David enjoyed the ethereal atmosphere, the feeling of being enveloped in a world apart. However, as he ventured deeper into the woods, he began to feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sense of being watched. He tried to dismiss it as his imagination, attributing it to the fog and the overall eeriness of the morning, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each stride. He found himself glancing over his shoulder, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. He told himself it was just a deer, or perhaps a fox, but a nagging feeling of unease continued to prickle at the back of his neck. As he rounded a bend in a trail, he stopped dead in his tracks. Standing directly in his path was a young girl. She was small, no older than 7 or 8, with pale skin that seemed almost translucent in the dim light. She wore a simple, old-fashioned dress that looked strangely out of place in the modern setting, but it was her eyes that truly froze him in terror. They were completely black, devoid of any white, like two dark voids staring back at him. He couldn't explain it, but the moment he saw those eyes, he was overcome with an overwhelming sense of dread, a primal fear that he had never experienced before. The child stood motionless, her gaze fixed on him. She didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't even blink. She simply stared, her black eyes seeming to pierce through him, as if she were looking into his very soul. David felt paralyzed, unable to move or speak. That he wanted to run, to turn and flee as fast as he could, but his legs felt like lead. That he was trapped, caught in the child's unsettling gaze. That he tried to tell himself that it was just a child, that he was being ridiculous, but the feeling of dread was too intense to ignore. Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, the child vanished. One moment she was standing there, blocking his path, and the next, she was gone. There was no rustling of leaves, no sign of her running away, just an unnerving silence that descended upon the woods. David stood there for what felt like an eternity, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind struggling to comprehend what he had just witnessed. That he eventually turned and ran, not stopping until he reached the safety of his home. The image of those black eyes burned into his memory. News of David's terrifying encounter, initially dismissed as a hallucination brought on by exhaustion or stress, eventually reached the ears of a local paranormal investigation group called the Chase Paranormal Society. This group, comprised of amateur enthusiasts and seasoned investigators alike, had been documenting strange occurrences in Cannock Chase for years. Initially, they were skeptical. They had heard countless ghost stories and urban legends associated with the area, and they were wary of jumping to conclusions based on a single, potentially unreliable account. The group was led by a man named Arthur, a retired history teacher with a lifelong fascination with the paranormal. Arthur was a pragmatic and methodical investigator, always emphasizing the importance of gathering evidence and ruling out logical explanations before attributing anything to supernatural causes. That he had seen too many enthusiastic but ultimately misguided attempts to prove the existence of ghosts, and he was determined to approach the black-eyed child legend with a healthy dose of skepticism. His team included Sarah, a tech-savvy young woman with a passion for electronic voice phenomena, EVP, and electromagnetic field, EMF readings. She was responsible for setting up and monitoring the various devices used to detect paranormal activity. Then there was Michael, a former police officer with a keen eye for detail and a knack for interviewing witnesses. His experience in law enforcement made him a valuable asset when it came to assessing the credibility of eyewitness accounts. Despite their initial reservations, the Chase Paranormal Society decided to investigate David's claims. They met with him, listened to his story in detail, and carefully assessed his demeanor. They found him to be a credible and reliable witness, genuinely shaken by what he had experienced. His detailed description of the child, the consistent details aligning with other, older reports, and the palpable fear in his voice convinced them that there might be something to the legend after all. Their initial approach was methodical. They began by researching the history of Cannock Chase, looking for any clues that might shed light on the black-eyed child phenomenon. They delved into local folklore, searching for stories of child deaths, tragic accidents, or other events that might have given rise to the legend. They consulted historical records, old maps, and newspaper archives, hoping to uncover any information that could help them understand the origins of the haunting. They also spent time in the area where David had his encounter, meticulously searching for any physical evidence. They looked for footprints, unusual markings, or anything that might indicate the presence of a child. They took photographs, recorded audio, and measured EMF levels, hoping to detect any anomalies that could be attributed to paranormal activity. Their initial investigations yielded nothing conclusive. They found no physical evidence to support David's story, and their equipment detected no unusual activity. However, they remained undeterred. They knew that paranormal investigations often required patience, persistence, and a willingness to explore all possibilities. They decided to expand their research, reaching out to other locals who claimed to have encountered the black-eyed child. The Chase Paranormal Society was now committed to unraveling the mystery, however strange it might be. As the Chase Paranormal Society delved deeper into their investigation, they uncovered another eyewitness account, this one even more unsettling than David's. This story came from a family, the Millers, who had been enjoying a picnic in a secluded clearing within Cannock Chase. The Millers were not locals. They were visiting from a nearby town, seeking a peaceful escape from the city. They were a typical family, John and Mary, the parents, and their two young children, 8-year-old Emily and 6-year-old Tom. The day had started beautifully, the sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the children were happily playing among the trees. They had found a perfect spot for their picnic. A grassy clearing surrounded by tall pines, far from the main trails and other visitors. The atmosphere was idyllic, a perfect picture of family harmony. However, as the afternoon wore on, a subtle shift occurred. The air grew still, the birdsong faded, and a strange silence descended upon the clearing. Emily, the older child, was the first to notice it. She stopped playing and turned to her parents, a puzzled expression on her face. "Mommy, why is it so quiet?" she asked. Mary, initially dismissing it as childish imagination, paused and listened. She realized that Emily was right. The usual sounds of the forest had vanished, replaced by an unnerving stillness. She tried to reassure her daughter, suggesting that the birds had simply gone to rest, but she couldn't shake off a growing feeling of unease. Then, Tom, the younger child, pointed towards the edge of the woods. "Look," he exclaimed, his voice filled with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Standing just inside the tree line was a young girl. She was small and pale, wearing an old-fashioned dress. The Millers initially assumed she was lost, perhaps separated from her parents. As they looked closer, they noticed something unsettling about the child. Her skin was unnaturally pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were completely black. A wave of cold washed over John, a feeling of dread that he couldn't explain. The child didn't speak or move. She simply stood there, staring at them with those black, fathomless eyes. There was something about her gaze that was deeply disturbing, a sense of emptiness and sorrow that resonated within them. Emily began to cry, clinging to her mother's leg. Then, the child took a step forward, slowly emerging from the woods. She held out her hand, as if beckoning them to come closer. Her face was expressionless, her eyes still fixed on them with that unsettling intensity. John felt an overwhelming urge to protect his family, to shield them from whatever malevolent force was emanating from the child. He stood up, his voice trembling slightly. "Are you lost?" he asked. "Can we help you find your parents?" The child didn't respond. She simply continued to stare, her hand still outstretched. The silence stretched on, broken only by Emily's sobs. Suddenly, the child spoke. Her voice was faint, barely a whisper, but it carried a chilling lack of emotion. "Help me," she said. "I'm lost." As she spoke, John felt a powerful urge to go to her, to offer her assistance. He took a step forward, but Mary grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Don't," she whispered, her voice filled with panic. "Something's not right." Mary's intuition proved to be life-saving. As John hesitated, torn between his desire to help the seemingly lost child and his wife's growing panic. The atmosphere in the clearing intensified, the air grew colder, and a faint, metallic scent filled their nostrils. The black-eyed child remained motionless, her black eyes unwavering, but her expression seemed to subtly shift, becoming almost predatory. Suddenly, Tom, the younger child, screamed. He pointed at the child's feet. "Mommy, look, she's not standing on the ground." Mary followed his gaze and gasped. The child's feet were indeed hovering slightly above the forest floor, as if she were suspended by an invisible force. That was enough for Mary. She grabbed both children, pulling them close to her, and shouted at John, "We have to go, now." Without hesitation, John scooped up the picnic basket and followed his wife and children, running as fast as they could away from the clearing. They didn't look back, didn't dare to see if the child was following them. They just ran, their hearts pounding in their chests, fueled by pure adrenaline. They didn't stop running until they reached their car, parked near the entrance to Cannock Chase. They piled into the vehicle, locked the doors, and sped away, leaving the unsettling clearing far behind. As they drove, they could feel the child's gaze still fixed on them, a chilling presence that lingered long after they had left the woods. The Millers were understandably traumatized by their experience. They reported the incident to the local police, but their story was met with skepticism. The officers suggested that they had likely misidentified a normal child or that their imaginations had gotten the better of them. Frustrated and dismissed, the Millers decided to contact the Chase Paranormal Society, hoping that they would take their story seriously. Arthur and his team were intrigued by the Millers' account. The details they provided aligned perfectly with the other reports of the black-eyed child: the pale skin, the black eyes, the old-fashioned dress, the feeling of dread, and the unsettling silence. All were consistent with the existing legend. The fact that the Millers were not locals and had no prior knowledge of the black-eyed child made their testimony even more compelling. The Chase Paranormal Society interviewed the Millers extensively, documenting every detail of their encounter. They were particularly interested in the child's apparent levitation, a detail that had not been mentioned in previous reports. This new element added another layer of complexity to the mystery, suggesting that the black-eyed child was not simply a ghost or a figment of imagination, but something far more unusual and potentially dangerous. The Millers' story served as a turning point in the Chase Paranormal Society's investigation that it solidified their belief that the black-eyed child was a real phenomenon, not just a local legend. They realized that they were dealing with something far more complex and unsettling than they had initially imagined. They knew that they had to dig deeper, to uncover the truth behind the black-eyed child, no matter how terrifying it might be. With the Millers' account fresh in their minds, the Chase Paranormal Society shifted their focus from gathering contemporary eyewitness testimonies to exploring the historical roots of the black-eyed child legend. Arthur, the history teacher, took the lead, diving deep into the archives of local libraries and historical societies that he was determined to uncover any historical connections that might shed light on the origins of the haunting. That he began by examining local folklore, searching for tales of ghostly children or other supernatural entities that might resemble the black-eyed child. That he discovered several stories of lost children who were said to haunt the woods, their spirits forever searching for their way home. These stories often involved tragic accidents or illnesses that had claimed the lives of young children in the area. One particularly chilling tale involved a group of children who had wandered into the woods during a harsh winter and become lost in a blizzard. They were never found, and their spirits were said to roam the chase, their mournful cries carried on the wind. Another story told of a young girl who had died of a contagious disease, her body buried in an unmarked grave within the woods. Her spirit was said to be restless, forever seeking companionship and spreading a sense of unease to those who crossed her path. Arthur also investigated historical records of child deaths in the area. That he discovered several instances of tragic accidents, such as children falling into abandoned mine shafts or drowning in local streams. That he also found records of outbreaks of deadly diseases, such as smallpox and diphtheria, which had claimed the lives of many children in the 18th and 19th centuries. That he cross-referenced these historical records with the locations of reported black-eyed child sightings, hoping to find a correlation between the two. That while he didn't find any direct connections, he did notice that many of the sightings occurred in areas that were historically associated with tragedy and loss. This led him to believe that the black-eyed child might be a manifestation of the collective grief and sorrow that had accumulated in Cannock Chase over the centuries. The Chase Paranormal Society also explored potential connections between the black-eyed child and other paranormal events reported in the area. Cannock Chase had a long history of strange occurrences, including sightings of phantom hounds, unexplained lights, and ghostly apparitions. Some researchers believed that these events were all interconnected, manifestations of a single, unknown force that haunted the chase. They investigated reports of a ghostly woman in white who was said to roam the woods, searching for her lost child. They also looked into stories of a spectral black dog that was said to be a harbinger of death. They wondered if the black-eyed child might be connected to these other entities, perhaps a manifestation of the same dark energy that fueled the other paranormal phenomena. Their historical research, while not providing definitive answers, offered valuable insights into the origins of the black-eyed child legend. That it suggested that the phenomenon was deeply rooted in the history and folklore of Cannock Chase, a product of the area's tragic past and its reputation as a place of darkness and mystery. the team started to wonder if the child was not just a ghost, but something else entirely, something born of trauma and despair. As the Chase Paranormal Society continued their work, another chilling account surfaced, this one involving a professional photographer named Emily Carter. Emily was drawn to Cannock Chase by its reputation for stunning natural beauty. She had spent weeks exploring the area, capturing its diverse landscapes in breathtaking detail. She was particularly fascinated by the way the light filtered through the trees, creating an ethereal and almost magical atmosphere. One afternoon, Emily ventured into a particularly dense section of the woods, hoping to capture a specific shot of a sunbeam piercing through the canopy. She set up her equipment, carefully adjusting her settings to capture the perfect image. As she peered through the viewfinder, she noticed a figure standing in the distance, partially obscured by the trees. At first, she thought it was just another hiker, but as she zoomed in, she realized that it was a child. The child was small and pale, wearing an old-fashioned dress. Emily initially thought that she might be able to capture a unique and compelling photograph of the child in a natural setting. She began to adjust her focus, preparing to take the shot. However, as she focused on the child, she noticed something deeply unsettling about her eyes. They were completely black, devoid of any white. A wave of nausea washed over her, and she felt a sudden, sharp pain in her head. Her equipment began to malfunction, the camera lens fogging up and the viewfinder displaying distorted images. Emily tried to dismiss it as a coincidence, but the feeling of unease grew stronger with each passing second. The child remained motionless, staring directly at her with those black, fathomless eyes. Emily felt as if she were being drained of her energy, her body becoming weak and heavy. She tried to speak, to call out to the child, but her voice wouldn't come. She felt paralyzed, trapped in the child's unsettling gaze. The pain in her head intensified, and she began to feel dizzy and disoriented. The camera started emitting a high-pitched whine, and the battery indicator flashed red. Despite being fully charged, suddenly, the child began to move. She slowly walked towards Emily, her black eyes never leaving her gaze. Emily felt a surge of panic, a desperate urge to escape. She tried to pack up her equipment, but her hands were shaking so violently that she couldn't grasp the camera properly. As the child drew closer, Emily felt a strange pressure building in her chest, as if she were being suffocated. She gasped for air, her vision blurring. She knew that she had to get away, that she was in imminent danger. With a burst of adrenaline, Emily managed to grab her camera bag and stumble backwards, away from the child. She turned and ran, not stopping until she reached her car, parked a considerable distance away. As she drove away, she glanced back at the woods, but the child was gone. Emily was shaken to her core by her experience. She developed a high fever and experienced severe headaches for several days after the encounter. Her camera never functioned properly again, despite being repaired by multiple technicians. She shared her story with the Chase Paranormal Society, providing them with valuable insights into the black-eyed child phenomenon. Her account was particularly significant because it included details of physical illness and equipment malfunction, suggesting that the entity might possess some form of electromagnetic influence. Despite the increasingly compelling nature of the eyewitness accounts, Arthur, the pragmatic leader of the Chase Paranormal Society, remained cautious. He knew that it was important to consider alternative explanations for the black-eyed child phenomenon, explanations that didn't rely on the supernatural. He insisted on exploring psychological theories that could account for the reported sightings. One of the first theories they considered was mass hysteria. Mass hysteria, also known as collective obsessional behavior, is a phenomenon in which a group of people experience similar physical or psychological symptoms as a result of social influence and psychological factors. Arthur theorized that the initial reports of the black-eyed child might have triggered a wave of anxiety and fear within the local community, leading to more and more people reporting similar encounters, even if they hadn't actually seen anything themselves. Another psychological explanation they explored was misidentification. Arthur suggested that some witnesses might have mistaken a normal child for the black-eyed child, their perceptions influenced by the existing legend. He pointed out that the human mind is prone to making errors, especially in stressful or ambiguous situations, the fog, the shadows, and the overall eeriness of Cannock Chase could easily distort one's perception, leading to misidentification. The team also discussed the role of pareidolia, a psychological phenomenon in which the brain perceives familiar patterns or shapes in random or ambiguous stimuli. Arthur suggested that some witnesses might have seen a pattern of light and shadow that resembled a child's face, their minds filling in the details based on the existing legend that he explained that the human brain is wired to seek out patterns, even when they don't actually exist. The power of suggestion was another factor that the Chase Paranormal Society considered. Arthur argued that the constant media coverage of the black-eyed child legend might have primed people to see what they expected to see. That he explained that the human mind is highly susceptible to suggestion, especially when it comes to paranormal phenomena. If people are told that they are likely to see a ghost, they are more likely to perceive something that could be interpreted as a ghostly apparition. Arthur also pointed out the potential for confirmation bias, a cognitive bias in which people tend to seek out and interpret information that confirms their existing beliefs, while ignoring or downplaying information that contradicts them. He suggested that witnesses who already believed in the black-eyed child might be more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli as evidence of its existence. Sarah, the tech expert, also looked into the possibility of infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that can affect human emotions and perceptions. She researched whether any natural or man-made sources of infrasound existed in Cannock Chase, as these could potentially induce feelings of unease, anxiety, or even hallucinations in some individuals. While these psychological explanations couldn't account for all of the details in the eyewitness accounts, they provided a valuable framework for understanding how the black-eyed child legend might have taken root and spread. The Chase Paranormal Society recognized that it was important to consider all possibilities, both supernatural and psychological, in their quest to uncover the truth. Despite considering the psychological explanations, the Chase Paranormal Society couldn't shake the feeling that something truly unexplained was occurring in Cannock Chase. The sheer consistency of the eyewitness accounts, coupled with the unsettling details of physical illness and equipment malfunctions, led them to believe that a more direct investigation was warranted. They decided to conduct a nighttime vigil in the area where most of the sightings had been reported. The night they chose was dark and moonless, the sky obscured by a thick blanket of clouds. The air was heavy and still, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Cannock Chase at night was a different world, a place where shadows danced and whispered secrets. The familiar beauty of the daytime was replaced by an oppressive sense of unease, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Arthur, Sarah, and Michael gathered at the designated location, a clearing deep within the woods. They set up their equipment, EMF meters, audio recorders, infrared cameras, and thermal imaging devices. They planned to spend the entire night monitoring the area, hoping to capture any evidence of paranormal activity. As darkness enveloped the woods, strange noises began to emerge. The rustling of leaves, the snapping of twigs, and the distant hooting of an owl created an eerie symphony of sounds. The team tried to remain calm, reminding themselves that these noises were likely caused by natural phenomena. But as the night wore on, the noises became more frequent and more unsettling. They heard what sounded like footsteps approaching their location, but when they shined their flashlights in the direction of the sound, they saw nothing. They heard faint whispers carried on the wind, but they couldn't make out any discernible words. They heard the distant sound of a child crying, a mournful wail that echoed through the woods. As the hours passed, their equipment began to malfunction. The EMF meter spiked erratically. The audio recorders captured strange static and distorted noises, and the infrared cameras displayed unexplained thermal anomalies. Sarah, the tech expert, was baffled by the equipment's behavior. She checked the batteries, the connections, and the settings, but she couldn't find any logical explanation for the malfunctions. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive, the feeling of being watched intensifying with each passing minute. The team felt a growing sense of dread, a primal fear that they couldn't ignore. They huddled together, their nerves on edge, their senses heightened. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. A wave of cold washed over the clearing, causing the team to shiver uncontrollably. The air grew thick with a metallic scent, the same scent that the Millers had reported experiencing during their encounter with the black-eyed child. Then, they saw it. A small, pale figure standing at the edge of the woods, partially obscured by the shadows. The figure was motionless, its face hidden from view, but they knew, without a doubt, that it was the black-eyed child. It was Michael, the former police officer, who decided to approach the figure. Despite his initial skepticism, he was now convinced that they were dealing with something extraordinary. He had seen too much during his years in law enforcement to dismiss the eyewitness accounts and the strange phenomena they had witnessed during the vigil. He felt a sense of duty to investigate, to understand what they were facing. He took a deep breath and began to walk towards the edge of the woods, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Arthur and Sarah watched him anxiously, their hearts pounding in their chests. They urged him to be careful, but Michael was determined. As he drew closer to the figure, he could make out more details. The child was indeed small and pale, wearing an old-fashioned dress. Her head was bowed, her face obscured by her long, dark hair. He could feel the oppressive sense of dread intensifying, a primal fear that threatened to overwhelm him. He stopped a few feet away from the child, his flashlight beam illuminating her face. He gasped. Her eyes were completely black, devoid of any white. They were like two dark voids, staring back at him with an unsettling intensity. He felt as if he were looking into the abyss, into a realm of darkness and despair. The child didn't speak or move, she simply stood there, her black eyes fixed on him. Michael felt paralyzed, unable to move or speak. He tried to maintain his composure, to remind himself that he was a trained professional, but the feeling of dread was too overwhelming to ignore. He tried to ask her a question, to break the silence, but his voice wouldn't come. He felt as if his vocal cords were frozen, his throat constricted. He tried to take a step closer, but his legs felt like lead. Suddenly, the child raised her head and looked directly at him. Her expression was blank, devoid of any emotion, but her eyes seemed to bore into his very soul. He felt a sharp pain in his head, a wave of nausea washing over him. He felt as if he were being drained of his energy, his body becoming weak and heavy. Then, the child spoke. Her voice was faint, barely a whisper, but it carried a chilling lack of emotion. "Can you help me?" she said. "I'm lost." As she spoke, Michael felt a powerful urge to help her, to offer her assistance. He reached out his hand, as if to take her hand, but as his fingers brushed against her skin, he felt a jolt of electricity surge through his body. He recoiled in shock, his hand snapping back. He felt a burning sensation on his skin, as if he had been burned by a hot object. He looked at the child's face again, and her expression had changed. Her eyes were now filled with a malevolent glee, a sinister satisfaction. He realized that he had been tricked, that he was in grave danger. Without hesitation, he turned and ran, sprinting back towards Arthur and Sarah. He didn't look back, didn't dare to see if the child was following him. He just ran, his heart pounding in his chest, fueled by pure adrenaline. He reached Arthur and Sarah, breathless and terrified. He told them what had happened, his voice trembling with fear. They didn't doubt him for a moment. They had seen the child, had felt the oppressive sense of dread, and they knew that he was telling the truth. Michael's personal encounter with the black-eyed child shattered any remaining skepticism within the Chase Paranormal Society. They now knew, without a doubt, that they were dealing with something truly extraordinary and potentially dangerous. The hunt for answers was no longer just an intellectual exercise. It had become a personal quest for survival. In the aftermath of Michael's chilling encounter, the Chase Paranormal Society retreated to their headquarters, a small, cluttered office above a local bookstore. They needed to analyze the evidence they had gathered, to make sense of the increasingly complex and unsettling mystery of the black-eyed child. They meticulously reviewed the eyewitness accounts, comparing the details of each encounter. They noted the consistent descriptions of the child: pale skin, black eyes, old-fashioned dress, and an unsettling silence. They also noted the recurring themes: a feeling of dread, equipment malfunctions, and the child's sudden disappearances. Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, they had no definitive photographic or video evidence. Emily Carter's camera had been permanently damaged, and the infrared cameras used during the nighttime vigil had only captured blurry images and unexplained thermal anomalies. They had hoped to capture a clear image of the child, but they had been unsuccessful. They carefully analyzed the audio recordings from the vigil. They could hear the strange noises they had experienced in the woods, the rustling of leaves, the snapping of twigs, and the distant hooting of an owl. They could also hear the faint whispers and the mournful cries of a child. However, they couldn't make out any discernible words or identify the source of the sounds. The EMF readings from the vigil were equally inconclusive. The meters had spiked erratically, but they couldn't determine if the spikes were caused by paranormal activity or by natural electromagnetic fluctuations. They consulted with an electrical engineer, who suggested that the spikes could have been caused by nearby power lines or by atmospheric disturbances. Despite the lack of definitive proof, the Chase Paranormal Society couldn't ignore the persistence of the phenomenon. The eyewitness accounts were too consistent, the details too compelling, and the personal experiences too unsettling to dismiss as mere coincidence or psychological illusion. They knew that something strange was happening in Cannock Chase, something that defied easy explanation. They discussed the possibility that the black-eyed child was a ghost, the spirit of a child who had died tragically in the area. They considered the theory that it was a manifestation of the collective grief and sorrow that had accumulated in Cannock Chase over the centuries. They also entertained the notion that it was something entirely different, something that they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Arthur, ever the pragmatist, reminded the team that they still needed to consider alternative explanations. That he suggested that they consult with a psychologist to explore the possibility that the eyewitness accounts were the result of suggestion, pareidolia, or other psychological phenomena. Sarah, the tech expert, proposed that they conduct further investigations using more sophisticated equipment. She suggested that they use ground-penetrating radar to search for unmarked graves or other anomalies beneath the surface of Cannock Chase. She also suggested that they use a more sensitive EMF meter to try to detect any electromagnetic fields associated with the black-eyed child. Michael, the former police officer, argued that they needed to reach out to other paranormal investigators to see if they had encountered similar phenomena in other locations. That he believed that the black-eyed child might be part of a larger, more widespread mystery. The Chase Paranormal Society knew that their investigation was far from over. They had gathered a wealth of evidence, but they still lacked the definitive proof needed to solve the mystery of the black-eyed child. But they were determined to continue their search, to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. With the psychological explanations and the limitations of their physical evidence thoroughly considered, the Chase Paranormal Society turned their attention to more speculative, paranormal theories. Michael, with his experience investigating diverse crimes, was surprisingly open to these possibilities, arguing that sometimes the most logical explanation is simply the least likely. The most straightforward paranormal explanation was, of course, that the black-eyed child was a ghost, perhaps the spirit of a young girl who had died tragically in Cannock Chase, unable to find peace and forever trapped in the woods. This theory aligned with the historical research they had conducted, the stories of lost children and tragic accidents that haunted the area. The child's pale appearance, old-fashioned dress, and unsettling silence could all be interpreted as characteristics of a ghostly apparition. However, the levitation witnessed by the Millers and the electrical jolt experienced by Michael suggested that the black-eyed child was more than just a simple ghost. These phenomena hinted at a more powerful and potentially malevolent force. This led the team to consider other, more unconventional paranormal explanations. Point 1 theory, proposed by Sarah, was that the black-eyed child was an interdimensional being, an entity from another realm that had somehow crossed over into our reality. She argued that the child's ability to appear and disappear suddenly, and the strange electromagnetic effects associated with her presence, could be explained by interdimensional travel. She cited accounts of other interdimensional encounters, where witnesses had reported similar phenomena. Another theory, suggested by Arthur, was that the black-eyed child was a tulpa, a being created through focused thought and collective belief. He argued that the black-eyed child legend had become so ingrained in the local culture that it had, in effect, manifested itself as a real entity. The collective fear and anxiety surrounding the legend had given it power, allowing it to take physical form and interact with the world. The symbolism of the black eyes was another aspect of the phenomenon that the Chase Paranormal Society explored. Black eyes are often associated with darkness, evil, and the unknown. In many cultures, they are seen as a sign of demonic possession or supernatural power. The fact that the child's eyes were completely black, devoid of any white, added to the sense of unease and dread that she evoked. The feeling of dread associated with the encounters was also significant. Witnesses consistently reported experiencing a primal fear, a sense of impending doom, the moment they laid eyes on the child. This suggested that the black-eyed child was not just a neutral observer, but an active force, capable of influencing human emotions and perceptions. Michael researched the symbolism of children in folklore and mythology. He discovered that children are often seen as symbols of innocence and purity, but they can also be associated with vulnerability and helplessness. The black-eyed child subverted this symbolism, turning innocence into something sinister and vulnerable into something powerful. The Chase Paranormal Society recognized that these paranormal explanations were highly speculative and difficult to prove. However, they felt that it was important to consider all possibilities, no matter how far-fetched they might seem. They knew that the truth about the black-eyed child was likely to be stranger and more complex than anything they could imagine. Regardless of its true nature, the legend of the black-eyed child has undeniably left its mark on the community surrounding Cannock Chase. The tales have woven themselves into the fabric of local life, influencing everything from tourism to folklore to the everyday anxieties of the residents. On one hand, the legend has fueled a surge in paranormal tourism. Ghost hunters, urban explorers, and thrill seekers from all over the world are drawn to Cannock Chase, hoping to catch a glimpse of the black-eyed child or experience the area's other reported paranormal phenomena. Local businesses have capitalized on this trend, offering ghost tours, paranormal investigation workshops, and black-eyed child merchandise. Some residents welcome the influx of tourists, seeing it as a boost to the local economy. However, the legend has also instilled a sense of fear and unease within the community. Parents are hesitant to let their children play alone in the woods, and hikers are more cautious about venturing off the beaten path. The stories of the black-eyed child have tapped into primal fears, creating a sense of vulnerability and paranoia. The local authorities have struggled to manage the impact of the legend. They have received numerous reports of black-eyed child sightings, most of which they have dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications. However, they are aware of the potential for harm, especially to vulnerable individuals who might be drawn into the woods in search of the entity. The legend has also had a significant impact on local folklore. The stories of the black-eyed child have been passed down through generations, evolving and changing with each retelling. The child has become a symbol of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of Cannock Chase, a reminder of the area's tragic past and its reputation for paranormal activity. Some locals have embraced the legend, incorporating it into their own personal beliefs and practices. They leave offerings in the woods, hoping to appease the black-eyed child or to ward off its malevolent influence. They tell stories of encounters with the child, adding their own personal experiences to the growing body of lore. Others have rejected the legend, seeing it as nothing more than a sensationalized hoax that exploits the area's tragic past. They argue that the stories of the black-eyed child are disrespectful to the victims of past tragedies and that they perpetuate harmful stereotypes about the area. The Chase Paranormal Society has played a complex role in the community's relationship with the legend. Their investigations have helped to fuel the fascination with the black-eyed child, but they have also provided a voice of reason and a source of information for those who are seeking answers. Arthur, Sarah, and Michael have become local celebrities, sought after by journalists, documentary filmmakers, and paranormal enthusiasts. They have used their platform to educate the public about the black-eyed child legend, to share their findings, and to encourage responsible exploration of Cannock Chase. Despite their best efforts, the legend of the black-eyed child continues to divide the community. Some see it as a source of pride, a unique and intriguing aspect of their local culture. Others see it as a source of shame, a reminder of the area's tragic past and its reputation for paranormal activity. But one thing is certain: the black-eyed child has become an indelible part of the identity of Cannock Chase. The Chase Paranormal Society's investigation into the black-eyed child of Cannock Chase remains open, a testament to the enduring mystery and the lack of a definitive answer. Despite countless hours of research, numerous eyewitness accounts, and a wealth of circumstantial evidence, the true nature of the phenomenon remains elusive. Shrouded in a veil of speculation and uncertainty, that we have explored the various explanations, from the psychological to the paranormal, each offering a different perspective on the black-eyed child legend. That we have considered the possibility of mass hysteria, misidentification, and the power of suggestion. That we have delved into the historical roots of the legend, exploring the tragic past of Cannock Chase and its reputation for paranormal activity. We have also entertained the more speculative theories, the possibility that the black-eyed child is a ghost, an interdimensional being, or a tulpa manifested by collective belief. That we have examined the symbolism of the black eyes and the feeling of dread associated with the encounters, searching for clues that might shed light on the entity's true nature. But in the end, we are left with more questions than answers. That is the black-eyed child a real entity, a supernatural force that roams the woods of Cannock Chase, or is it a product of human imagination, a manifestation of our deepest fears and anxieties? The evidence is conflicting, the interpretations varied. Some will cling to the psychological explanations, finding comfort in the rational and the explainable. Others will embrace the paranormal theories, drawn to the mystery and the possibility of something beyond our understanding. The Chase Paranormal Society continues their work, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a desire to uncover the truth. They are constantly seeking new evidence, exploring new theories, and engaging with the community to gather more information. But for now, the mystery of the black-eyed child remains unsolved. That we can only speculate, wonder, and perhaps feel a lingering sense of unease. As you leave Cannock Chase, consider the stories you have heard, the evidence you have examined, and the conflicting explanations you have considered. Draw your own conclusions, but be warned: the woods of Cannock Chase have a way of staying with you, of planting seeds of doubt and fear in the back of your mind. And as you walk away, ask yourself this: is the black-eyed child still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for her next encounter? Does she still roam the woods of Cannock Chase, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most beautiful places? Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the black-eyed child legend is not what we know, but what we don't know. It is the uncertainty, the ambiguity, and the lingering sense of unease that makes the story so compelling and so unsettling. So, take one last look at the woods of Cannock Chase, listen to the rustling of the leaves, the whispering of the wind, and the distant hooting of an owl, and ask yourself, what secrets do these woods hold? What mysteries remain unsolved? And what horrors might be lurking just beyond the tree line? The answer, perhaps, is best left unknown, but the question, like the black-eyed child herself, will likely continue to haunt the shadows of Cannock Chase for years to come. Louisville, Kentucky. A city known for its bourbon, its baseball bats, and the thunderous spectacle of the Kentucky Derby. But beyond the charm and southern hospitality, a darker landmark casts a long, Gothic shadow: Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Perched atop a hill overlooking the city, its imposing silhouette hints at a history steeped in suffering, death, and whispers of the supernatural. This is not just an abandoned building, it's a vessel brimming with echoes of a tragic past, a place where the veil between worlds is said to be thin. Waverly Hills isn't just another haunted house attraction, it's a stark reminder of a time when tuberculosis, the White Plague, ravaged the world. In the early 20th century, before the advent of effective treatments, sanatoriums like Waverly Hills were the last hope for those afflicted. they were places of both medical experimentation and desperate hope, but more often, they became silent witnesses to unimaginable loss. The very stones of Waverly Hills seem to absorb the pain and despair of the thousands who perished within its walls, and at the heart of its grim legend lies the body chute. Imagine a long, dark tunnel, sloping downwards away from the main building. This wasn't a feature advertised on the blueprints, this was a necessity, a grim solution to a horrifying problem. The sheer volume of deaths at Waverly Hills threatened to demoralize the patients who remained clinging to life and hope. So, under the cover of darkness, the bodies of the deceased were discreetly transported through this tunnel, hidden from view, a constant reminder of failure and mortality. This body chute, now sealed off from the public, has become the epicenter of paranormal claims at Waverly Hills. Visitors and paranormal investigators alike report hearing disembodied screams echoing from its depths, feeling intense waves of cold, and witnessing unexplained apparitions. Some believe that the concentrated energy of so much death and suffering has imprinted itself upon the chute, creating a vortex of negative energy. Others suggest that the spirits of those who pass through the tunnel are trapped, forever reliving their final moments. The stories are chilling, whispers in the dead of night, the distinct scent of antiseptic and decay, even decades after the building's abandonment, unexplained shadows flitting in the corners of your vision. But the most persistent and disturbing reports center on those screams, guttural cries of anguish that seem to claw their way out of the very earth. Are they simply the product of overactive imaginations, fueled by the building's reputation and the darkness that envelopes it, or are they the lingering echoes of unimaginable pain, forever trapped within the confines of the body chute? Over the next hour, we'll delve into the history of Waverly Hills, exploring the science behind the tuberculosis epidemic, the brutal realities of life within the sanatorium, and the chilling accounts of those who have dared to venture into its haunted depths. That will examine the evidence, separating fact from fiction, and attempt to understand the enduring power of this place, a place where the line between the living and the dead seems to blur, and where the screams from the body chute continue to echo through the corridors of time. Prepare to confront the darkness, to question what you believe, and to confront the possibility that some places are simply too steeped in tragedy to ever truly be at peace. To truly understand the chilling legacy of Waverly Hills, we must journey back to a time when tuberculosis, or TB, was not a curable disease but a relentless killer. In the early 20th century, this highly contagious bacterial infection, primarily affecting the lungs, reached epidemic proportions, earning the grim moniker, the White Plague. It was a disease that preyed on the vulnerable, thrived in crowded and unsanitary conditions, and cast a pall of fear over entire communities. Imagine a world without antibiotics, where a simple cough could be a death sentence. Tuberculosis spread rapidly through families, workplaces, and densely populated urban areas. It was a disease that crossed social boundaries, affecting both the rich and the poor. Though its impact was disproportionately felt by those living in poverty, the symptoms were insidious: a persistent cough, fatigue, weight loss, night sweats, and eventually, the coughing up of blood. These were the telltale signs that marked the beginning of a slow and agonizing decline. The scale of the epidemic was staggering. In the United States alone, TB was responsible for more deaths than any other infectious disease. Cities were overwhelmed, and existing hospitals were unable to cope with the sheer number of patients. This desperate situation led to the construction of sanatoriums like Waverly Hills, isolated havens designed to quarantine the infected and provide them with the best possible care. But what did the best possible care actually entail? In the absence of effective drugs, treatment options were limited and often brutal. One common practice was rest cure, which involved prolonged periods of bed rest, fresh air, and a high-fat diet. While this could sometimes slow the progression of the disease, it was far from a cure. More invasive treatments were also employed, often with questionable success. Pneumothorax, or lung collapse therapy, involved artificially collapsing a lung to allow it to rest and heal. This procedure was painful and carried significant risks. Another experimental procedure, thoracoplasty, involved surgically removing ribs to permanently collapse a lung, further restricting breathing capacity. Sunlight and fresh air were considered vital, leading to patients spending long hours on balconies, often exposed to harsh weather conditions. The belief was that sunlight could kill the bacteria, but this was based on limited scientific understanding. In reality, these treatments often did little to alleviate the suffering of patients and, in some cases, may have even worsened their condition. Life inside a sanatorium like Waverly Hills was one of isolation, fear, and constant reminders of mortality. Patients were separated from their families and communities, often for years. As they underwent these experimental treatments, the daily routine was monotonous, punctuated by medical procedures, meals, and the ever-present sound of coughing. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety, as patients watched their fellow sufferers slowly succumb to the disease. The sheer desperation of the situation fueled a relentless search for a cure, but for many, the sanatorium became their final resting place. The body chute at Waverly Hills stands as a grim testament to the high death toll and the desperate measures taken to conceal the devastating reality of the tuberculosis epidemic. It is a reminder of a time when hope was often overshadowed by despair, and when the whispers of death echoed through the halls of institutions like Waverly Hills. From the grim reality of the White Plague emerged a beacon of hope, or at least, the desperate illusion of one, Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Its story begins not as a Gothic monolith of despair, but as a humble, almost optimistic endeavor to combat the growing threat of tuberculosis in Jefferson County, Kentucky. The original Waverly Hills, built in 1910, was a far cry from the imposing structure that stands today. It was a small, two-story wooden building designed to house a mere handful of patients. This initial facility was intended to be a temporary solution, a place to isolate and treat those afflicted, while a more permanent sanatorium was planned. Back then, the hope was that the epidemic could be contained, that a dedicated facility, coupled with the available treatments, could make a real difference. The optimism surrounding this early iteration of Waverly Hills is almost palpable in historical accounts. It represented a community's commitment to caring for its sick and a belief in the power of medicine to overcome even the most daunting challenges. Staffed by dedicated doctors and nurses, the sanatorium was envisioned as a place of healing, a refuge from the ravages of tuberculosis. However, the initial optimism was quickly overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the epidemic. The small wooden building was simply inadequate to meet the growing demand. Patients were turned away, and the waiting list grew longer and longer. It became painfully clear that a much larger facility was needed. In 1924, construction began on the grand, 5-story, Gothic-style building that we recognize as Waverly Hills today. This new sanatorium was a massive undertaking, a testament to the severity of the tuberculosis crisis. Built on the same hilltop location, the imposing structure was designed to house hundreds of patients, providing them with state-of-the-art medical care and comfortable living conditions. The construction itself was a significant event, employing hundreds of local workers and injecting much-needed economic activity into the region. The sheer size and grandeur of the new Waverly Hills reflected a renewed sense of hope, a belief that the community could finally get ahead of the epidemic. The completed sanatorium was a marvel of its time. It featured spacious patient rooms, large sunbathing balconies, a fully equipped operating room, and even a self-contained power plant. The design incorporated the latest medical thinking, with an emphasis on fresh air, sunlight, and isolation to prevent the spread of infection. Despite the underlying tragedy of the tuberculosis epidemic, the opening of the new Waverly Hills was a cause for celebration. It represented a significant investment in public health and a renewed commitment to caring for those afflicted with the disease. The initial years of operation were marked by a sense of purpose and dedication, as doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to provide the best possible care to their patients. Little did they know that the halls of this grand building would soon echo with the sounds of suffering and despair, and that the body chute would become a symbol of the overwhelming loss that would define Waverly Hills for generations to come. The initial optimism would slowly fade, replaced by the grim reality of a disease that defied treatment and claimed countless lives. The Gothic architecture, initially intended to inspire hope, would instead become a haunting reminder of the darkness that lay within. Stepping inside Waverly Hills during its operational years was like entering a world suspended between hope and despair. The grand architecture, initially intended to inspire, couldn't mask the underlying atmosphere of illness and isolation that permeated every corridor and patient room. Life within those walls was a carefully orchestrated routine designed to fight the disease, but often, it felt more like a slow, agonizing march towards the inevitable. Imagine waking each morning to the sound of coughing, a constant, rattling chorus that echoed through the building. The air, though supposedly fresh and clean, carried the distinct scent of antiseptic, mingled with the musty odor of illness and decay. Patients, often separated from their families for years, were confined to their rooms or the sunbathing balconies, their days stretching out before them in monotonous repetition. The experimental treatments were a central part of daily life, and they were often far from pleasant. Sun baths, while seemingly benign, could be grueling, especially during the harsh Kentucky summers or the biting winter months. Patients were exposed to the elements for hours, their skin burning or freezing, all in the name of fighting the disease. Pneumothorax, the lung collapse therapy, was a more invasive and painful procedure. Imagine lying on a cold operating table as a doctor inserted a needle into your chest, injecting air to collapse a lung. The procedure offered the hope of relief, but it also carried the risk of complications, including infection and further lung damage. The pain was often intense, and the recovery period could be long and arduous. Thoracoplasty, the surgical removal of ribs, was an even more drastic measure, reserved for the most severe cases. This procedure was highly invasive and left patients permanently disfigured and with severely restricted breathing capacity. The recovery was long and painful, and the procedure often did little to improve their overall condition. Beyond the physical treatments, the isolation and loneliness were perhaps the most difficult aspects of life inside Waverly Hills. Patients were separated from their loved ones, their contact limited to occasional visits or letters. The lack of social interaction and the constant awareness of their own mortality took a heavy toll on their mental and emotional well-being. Anecdotal stories from former patients and staff paint a vivid picture of life inside Waverly Hills. One nurse recalled the heartbreaking sight of children separated from their parents, their faces pressed against the glass, longing for a hug they couldn't receive. Another patient described the camaraderie that developed among those who shared the same fate, a bond forged in the face of adversity and death. The constant presence of death was an inescapable reality. The body chute, a dark tunnel leading away from the main building, served as a constant reminder of the high mortality rate. Patients would often see bodies being wheeled past their rooms, shrouded in white sheets, destined for the chute and a final, anonymous departure. The staff, too, endured immense pressure and emotional strain. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, often facing overwhelming odds, to provide care and comfort to their patients. They witnessed firsthand the suffering and death that permeated the sanatorium, and they carried the burden of knowing that they could often do little to change the outcome. Life inside Waverly Hills was a crucible, a place where hope and despair collided, and where the human spirit was tested to its limits. That it was a world of isolation, experimental treatments, and the constant presence of death, a world that left an indelible mark on all who passed through its doors. The echoes of their experiences continue to resonate within the walls of the abandoned sanatorium, fueling the legends of paranormal activity and the chilling reputation that Waverly Hills carries to this day. Now, let's turn our attention to the feature that has become synonymous with Waverly Hills' chilling reputation, the body chute, also known as the death tunnel. This subterranean passage was far more than just a means of removing the deceased. It was a symbol of the sanatorium's grim reality and a focal point for the intense paranormal activity reported there. Imagine a long, narrow tunnel, shrouded in darkness and dampness, sloping downwards from the main building. Constructed of concrete and stone, it was designed to be discreet, hidden from the view of patients and visitors alike. The entrance, located in the basement of the sanatorium, was deliberately inconspicuous. Blending into the architecture of the building, the purpose of the body chute was simple: to transport the bodies of deceased patients away from the sanatorium without causing undue alarm or demoralization to those who remained. The high mortality rate at Waverly Hills meant that bodies were being removed on a near-daily basis, and the sight of these processions could have a devastating impact on the morale of the patients, hindering their recovery and exacerbating their fears. Instead of being carried through the main hallways and out the front entrance, the bodies were quietly taken to the basement, placed on carts or stretchers, and then wheeled down the body chute. The tunnel led to a set of railway tracks at the bottom of the hill, where a waiting train or hearse would transport the bodies to their final resting place. The sheer volume of bodies that pass through the body chute is staggering. While accurate records are difficult to come by, estimates suggest that thousands of people died at Waverly Hills during its years of operation. This means that the body chute was in constant use, a silent conveyor belt of death, bearing witness to the immense suffering and loss that occurred within the sanatorium's walls. The physical description of the body chute adds to its unsettling aura. The tunnel was dimly lit, if lit at all, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. The sloping floor made it difficult to navigate, and the echoing sounds of footsteps and voices added to the sense of unease. For those who had to use the chute, whether to transport bodies or to perform maintenance, it was a place of dread and foreboding. It's not difficult to understand why the body chute has become such a central part of the Waverly Hills legend. It represents the darkest aspects of the sanatorium's history: the high death toll, the desperation of the patients, and the efforts to conceal the grim reality from those who remained. The sheer volume of bodies that passed through the tunnel, combined with the unsettling atmosphere, has imbued it with a palpable sense of sadness and despair. Many believe that the body chute is a vortex of negative energy, a place where the spirits of the deceased are trapped, unable to find peace. The reports of paranormal activity in and around the tunnel are numerous and chilling, ranging from disembodied voices and unexplained shadows to feelings of intense dread and physical sensations of being touched or pushed. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it's undeniable that the body chute holds a powerful emotional charge. It is a physical manifestation of the suffering and loss that occurred at Waverly Hills, a reminder of a time when tuberculosis was a relentless killer and when hope was often overshadowed by despair. The legend of the body chute is a testament to the enduring power of tragic history and the human capacity to be both fascinated and repelled by the darkness. The legend of Waverly Hills is inextricably linked to its staggering death toll, while precise numbers remain elusive due to incomplete records and lost documentation. Estimates place the number of deaths within the sanatorium's walls at several thousand, potentially exceeding 60,000. This high mortality rate, fueled by a combination of factors, cemented Waverly Hills' reputation as a place of immense suffering and contributed significantly to its haunted legacy. Several factors contributed to the tragically high death toll. First and foremost was the lack of effective cures for tuberculosis during the sanatorium's operational years. While treatments like rest cure, pneumothorax, and thoracoplasty were employed, they were often ineffective and, in some cases, may have even hastened the patient's demise. These aggressive treatments, while intended to help, often placed immense strain on already weakened bodies. Secondary infections were also a major contributor to the death toll. The crowded conditions within the sanatorium, combined with weakened immune systems, made patients highly susceptible to other diseases, such as pneumonia and influenza. These secondary infections often proved fatal, especially for those already weakened by tuberculosis. The very nature of tuberculosis itself played a significant role. The disease is highly contagious and can progress rapidly, especially in individuals with compromised immune systems. Even with the best available care, many patients were simply too far gone by the time they arrived at Waverly Hills. Furthermore, the sanatorium served as a repository for the most severe and challenging cases of tuberculosis. patients who were deemed incurable by other hospitals and clinics were often sent to Waverly Hills as a last resort. This meant that the sanatorium was dealing with a population of patients who were already at a high risk of death. The high death toll at Waverly Hills had a profound impact on both patients and staff. The constant presence of death created an atmosphere of fear and despair, making it difficult for patients to maintain hope and for staff to remain optimistic. The sheer volume of deaths also placed a tremendous strain on the sanatorium's resources, both human and material. The body chute, as we discussed, was a direct consequence of the high death toll. It was a necessary, albeit grim, solution to the problem of removing the deceased in a discreet and efficient manner. The existence of the body chute serves as a stark reminder of the scale of the tragedy that unfolded within the walls of Waverly Hills. The estimated death toll at Waverly Hills is a subject of much debate and speculation. Some believe that the numbers have been exaggerated over the years, while others argue that the true toll may be even higher than the official estimates. Regardless of the exact number, it is clear that Waverly Hills was a place of immense suffering and loss, a place where thousands of people died. In the fight against tuberculosis, the stories of those who died at Waverly Hills are often lost to history, their names and experiences forgotten. However, their presence continues to be felt within the walls of the abandoned sanatorium, fueling the legends of paranormal activity and the chilling reputation that Waverly Hills carries to this day. The high death toll is not just a statistic. It is a testament to the human cost of the tuberculosis epidemic and a reminder of the enduring power of tragic history. It's the chilling accounts of paranormal activity that truly solidify Waverly Hills' place in the pantheon of haunted locations. For decades, visitors, ghost hunters, and even skeptics have reported a wide range of unexplained phenomena within the sanatorium's decaying walls. While paranormal experiences are reported throughout the building, the area around the body chute consistently emerges as a hotspot for these unsettling events. Perhaps the most frequently reported phenomenon is the sound of disembodied screams echoing from the body chute. These aren't the faint whispers or rustling noises often attributed to ghosts. These are described as loud, guttural cries of anguish, as if someone is reliving their final moments in agonizing pain. Some speculate that these screams are the echoes of the suffering endured by the patients who passed through the tunnel, their pain imprinted upon the very fabric of the building. Unexplained shadows are another common occurrence. Visitors report seeing fleeting glimpses of dark figures moving in the periphery, darting across hallways, or lurking in the corners of rooms. These shadows often appear to have human-like shapes, but they are indistinct and difficult to make out clearly. In the body chute, these shadows are said to be particularly intense, sometimes appearing to coalesce into solid figures. Cold spots are another hallmark of paranormal activity at Waverly Hills. These are sudden, localized drops in temperature that occur for no apparent reason. Visitors often report feeling a sudden chill, even in areas that are otherwise warm and still. Near the body chute, these cold spots are said to be particularly intense, sometimes dropping the temperature by as much as 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Beyond these visual and auditory phenomena, many visitors also report experiencing intense feelings of dread, anxiety, and unease. The atmosphere inside Waverly Hills is often described as heavy and oppressive, making it difficult to breathe or think clearly. Some visitors report feeling like they are being watched, while others experience a sense of overwhelming sadness and despair. Near the body chute, these feelings are said to be amplified, creating a sense of palpable fear and impending doom. Specific stories abound. One visitor recounted hearing a child giggling near the body chute, only to turn around and find no one there. Another reported feeling a cold hand brush against their arm while walking through the tunnel, despite being completely alone. A group of paranormal investigators claimed to have captured an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, of a woman screaming in agony near the entrance to the body chute. While many of these reports are anecdotal, they are consistent and widespread, suggesting that something unusual is happening at Waverly Hills. Skeptics often attribute these experiences to psychological suggestibility, environmental factors, or misinterpretations of natural phenomena. However, the sheer volume of reports and the intensity of the experiences have convinced many that Waverly Hills is truly haunted. The legends surrounding Waverly Hills have also contributed to its haunted reputation. Stories of mistreatment, medical experimentation, and unexplained deaths have fueled the belief that the sanatorium is a place of trapped spirits and lingering trauma. These legends, combined with the physical and emotional atmosphere of the building, create a powerful setting for paranormal experiences. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it's undeniable that Waverly Hills is a place that evokes strong emotions. The history of suffering and loss, combined with the reports of paranormal activity, make it a destination that is both fascinating and terrifying. The screams that echo from the body chute, whether real or imagined, serve as a chilling reminder of the tragic past that continues to haunt the walls of Waverly Hills. The numerous reports of paranormal phenomena at Waverly Hills have attracted the attention of countless ghost hunting teams, both amateur and professional. Over the years, the sanatorium has been investigated by some of the most well-known names in the paranormal field, each hoping to capture definitive evidence of the afterlife and unravel the mysteries that shroud the decaying building. One of the earliest and most influential investigations was conducted by the team from the television show Ghost Hunters. Their episode, which aired in 2007, brought Waverly Hills to a national audience and further cemented its reputation as a haunted hotspot. The Ghost Hunters team focused their investigation on several key areas, including the body chute, the operating room, and room 502, which is rumored to be the site of a particularly tragic death. During their investigation, the Ghost Hunters team reported experiencing a number of unexplained phenomena, including cold spots, disembodied voices, and unexplained shadows. They also captured several EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, including what appeared to be a whispered voice saying, "Get out." While the team acknowledged that some of their findings could be attributed to natural causes, they concluded that Waverly Hills was indeed a location with significant paranormal activity. Another notable investigation was conducted by the team from Ghost Adventures. Known for their more aggressive and confrontational approach to ghost hunting, the Ghost Adventures team spent several nights at Waverly Hills, attempting to provoke and communicate with the spirits that are said to haunt the building. The Ghost Adventures team reported experiencing a number of intense paranormal events, including physical sensations of being touched and pushed, as well as unexplained noises and apparitions. They also captured several pieces of audio and video evidence that they interpreted as being communication from the spirits of former patients and staff. One particularly chilling piece of evidence was a video recording of what appeared to be a dark, shadowy figure moving through the body chute. In addition to these television investigations, Waverly Hills has also been investigated by numerous independent paranormal teams. These teams often use a variety of techniques, including EMF, electromagnetic field meters, thermal cameras, and dowsing rods, to detect and document paranormal activity. Many of these independent investigations have yielded similar results, with teams reporting a wide range of unexplained phenomena, including cold spots, disembodied voices, unexplained shadows, and intense feelings of dread. Some teams have also claimed to have captured photographic evidence of apparitions and other paranormal entities. It is important to note that the evidence captured during these paranormal investigations is often subjective and open to interpretation. Skeptics often argue that the reported phenomena can be explained by natural causes, such as drafts, temperature fluctuations, or psychological suggestibility. However, the sheer volume of reports and the consistency of the findings have convinced many that Waverly Hills is a place where the veil between worlds is thin. The investigations conducted at Waverly Hills have not only contributed to its haunted reputation but have also helped to preserve its history. By documenting the stories of former patients and staff and by attempting to communicate with the spirits that are said to haunt the building, these investigations have helped to keep the memory of Waverly Hills alive. The evidence, whether considered definitive or circumstantial, continues to draw researchers and thrill seekers, all hoping to experience the eerie phenomena for themselves. Beyond the specific reports of ghosts and apparitions, many believe that the body chute at Waverly Hills is imbued with a particularly potent, dark energy. This concept, while difficult to define scientifically, suggests that the concentrated suffering, death, and despair associated with the tunnel have somehow imprinted themselves upon the space, creating a tangible sense of negativity and unease. The theory of dark energy posits that traumatic events and intense emotions can leave a residual imprint on a location, creating an environment that is conducive to paranormal activity. This energy can manifest in a variety of ways, including cold spots, unexplained noises, and feelings of dread and anxiety that in the case of the body chute, the sheer volume of death and suffering that occurred within its confines is believed to have created an exceptionally strong concentration of this negative energy. The psychological impact of the body chute is undeniable, even for those who don't believe in ghosts. Simply standing in the tunnel can be a profoundly unsettling experience. The darkness, the dampness, and the knowledge of its grim purpose create a sense of unease and foreboding. The echoing sounds of footsteps and voices add to the sense of isolation and vulnerability. For those who are sensitive to energy or who are predisposed to paranormal beliefs, the body chute can be an overwhelming experience. Many report feeling a palpable sense of sadness and despair, as if they are absorbing the emotions of the patients who pass through the tunnel. Some even report experiencing physical sensations, such as headaches, nausea, and dizziness. The psychological impact of the body chute also plays a significant role in fueling paranormal beliefs. The intense emotions that are evoked by the space can make people more susceptible to suggestion and more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli as evidence of paranormal activity. That a creaking floorboard can be mistaken for a disembodied footstep, a shadow can be perceived as an apparition, and a cold spot can be interpreted as the presence of a ghost. The legends and stories surrounding Waverly Hills also contribute to the psychological impact of the body chute. The tales of mistreatment, medical experimentation, and unexplained deaths create a sense of dread and anticipation, making visitors more likely to experience paranormal phenomena. The body chute, as the symbol of the sanatorium's darkest secrets, becomes a focal point for these fears and anxieties. Skeptics often argue that the reported paranormal activity in the body chute is simply a product of psychological suggestibility and environmental factors. They point out that the darkness, the dampness, and the echoing sounds can all contribute to a sense of unease, and that the power of suggestion can amplify these effects. However, proponents of the dark energy theory argue that there is more to it than just psychological suggestion. They believe that the body chute is a place where the veil between worlds is thin, allowing for the manifestation of paranormal phenomena that cannot be explained by conventional science. Whether you believe in dark energy or not, it's undeniable that the body chute at Waverly Hills holds a powerful emotional charge. That it is a place where the past is palpable, where the echoes of suffering and death continue to resonate. The psychological impact of the space, combined with the reports of paranormal activity, makes it a destination that is both fascinating and terrifying. A place where the line between the living and the dead seems to blur. To truly grasp the chilling nature of the body chute at Waverly Hills, it's essential to hear directly from those who have experienced its unsettling atmosphere firsthand. Eyewitness accounts, drawn from interviews, visitor testimonials, and historical records, offer a glimpse into the paranormal phenomena that are said to occur within its dark confines. While these accounts are subjective, they paint a consistent picture of a place where the past is palpable and the line between the living and the dead seems to blur. One of the most compelling accounts comes from a former maintenance worker who was tasked with repairing a section of the body chute in the 1980s. That he described feeling an overwhelming sense of dread and unease while working in the tunnel, as if he was being watched by unseen eyes. That he also reported hearing faint whispers and moans. Despite being completely alone, he refused to return to the body chute after that experience. "I wouldn't go back down there for all the money in the world," he reportedly said. Another account comes from a visitor who participated in a ghost tour of Waverly Hills. she described feeling a sudden, intense wave of cold while standing near the entrance to the body chute. She also reported seeing a fleeting glimpse of a dark figure moving in the tunnel. It was just a shadow, but it looked like it had a human shape, she said. It was there for a split second, and then it was gone. A group of paranormal investigators shared their experience of capturing an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, near the body chute. The recording, which they played for others, appears to contain the sound of a woman screaming in agony. The investigators believe that the recording is evidence of the suffering endured by the patients who passed through the tunnel. The raw emotion in the scream is chilling and unforgettable. One particularly unsettling account comes from a visitor who claimed to have been physically touched while walking through the body chute. She described feeling a cold hand brush against her arm. Despite being completely alone, she also reported feeling a sharp pain in her chest, as if she had been stabbed. She left the tour immediately, feeling shaken and terrified. Several visitors have reported experiencing intense feelings of dread and anxiety while in the body chute. They described feeling like they are being watched. Like they are not alone. Some have reported feeling a sense of overwhelming sadness and despair, as if they are absorbing the emotions of the patients who passed through the tunnel. Historical records also provide some insights into the experiences of those who worked at Waverly Hills during its operational years. One former nurse described the body chute as a place of nightmares. She recalled the chilling sight of bodies being wheeled past her room, destined for the tunnel and a final, anonymous departure. She also spoke of the constant fear and anxiety that permeated the sanatorium, a fear that was amplified by the presence of the body chute. While these eyewitness accounts are anecdotal, they are consistent and widespread, suggesting that something unusual is happening at Waverly Hills. They offer a glimpse into the paranormal phenomena that are said to occur within the body chute, phenomena that cannot always be explained by conventional science. Skeptics may dismiss these accounts as the product of overactive imaginations or psychological suggestibility. However, for those who have experienced the unsettling atmosphere of the body chute firsthand, the memories are all too real. The stories serve as a chilling reminder of the tragic past that continues to haunt the walls of Waverly Hills, and they contribute to the enduring legend of the body chute as a place of dark energy and trapped spirits. The personal narratives add a human element to the ghostly tales, making the haunting all the more impactful. The tragic chapter of Waverly Hills' story, defined by suffering and loss, eventually came to an end. In the early 1960s, the development of effective drug treatments for tuberculosis, such as streptomycin, dramatically reduced the need for sanatoriums. As the number of TB cases declined, Waverly Hills, once a vital institution, became increasingly obsolete. In 1961, Waverly Hills Sanatorium officially closed its doors. The remaining patients were transferred to other facilities, and the staff were laid off. The closure marked the end of an era, a time when tuberculosis was a major public health crisis and when sanatoriums like Waverly Hills were the last hope for those afflicted. Following its closure as a TB sanatorium, Waverly Hills briefly reopened as a geriatric facility, known as Woodhaven Geriatric Sanitarium. However, this venture was short-lived and plagued by allegations of patient neglect and abuse. Woodhaven was eventually shut down in 1982, leaving Waverly Hills completely abandoned. The abandonment marked the beginning of a new phase in Waverly Hills history, a period of gradual decay and decline. Without proper maintenance and care, the building began to deteriorate, the elements took their toll, and the once grand structure slowly succumbed to the forces of nature. Vandals and trespassers also contributed to the sanatorium's decline. Windows were broken, walls were defaced, and valuable fixtures and equipment were stolen or destroyed. The interior of Waverly Hills became a chaotic mess, a testament to the destructive power of neglect and vandalism. The body chute, once a discreet and functional part of the sanatorium, became a repository for debris and trash. The tunnel, already dark and foreboding, became even more so, filled with the detritus of a forgotten past. The entrance to the body chute was eventually sealed off to prevent further vandalism and to protect the safety of visitors. The gradual decay of Waverly Hills added to its eerie atmosphere and contributed to its haunted reputation. The crumbling walls, the broken windows, and the decaying furniture created a sense of desolation and despair. The sounds of wind whistling through the broken windows and the creaking of the floorboards added to the unsettling atmosphere. Despite its dilapidated condition, Waverly Hills continued to attract attention. Urban explorers, ghost hunters, and curious onlookers ventured onto the property, drawn by its dark history and its reputation for paranormal activity. The sanatorium became a popular destination for those seeking a thrill or a glimpse into the unknown. The abandonment of Waverly Hills also allowed nature to reclaim the surrounding land. Trees and vines grew over the building, obscuring its once imposing facade. The sanatorium became a part of the landscape, a silent witness to the passage of time. The story of Waverly Hills' closure and abandonment is a sad one, a reminder of the transience of human endeavors and the inevitability of decay. However, it is also a story of resilience and rebirth. Despite its dilapidated condition, Waverly Hills has found new life as a tourist attraction and a paranormal hotspot, a place where the past continues to resonate and where the echoes of suffering and loss can still be heard. The building's physical decay only served to amplify the intensity of the stories and legends that clung to it, making it all the more captivating for those drawn to the paranormal. Today, Waverly Hills stands as a paradox, a site of immense suffering and tragic loss that has been transformed into a popular tourist attraction. Ghost tours, paranormal investigations, and historical tours draw thousands of visitors each year, eager to experience the sanatorium's eerie atmosphere and to connect with its dark history. While this transformation has provided a new lease on life for the decaying building, it also raises complex ethical questions about profiting from a place of immense suffering. The current owners of Waverly Hills have invested significant resources in preserving and restoring the building, making it safe and accessible for visitors. They offer a variety of tours, ranging from daytime historical tours to nighttime ghost tours and overnight paranormal investigations. These tours provide visitors with an opportunity to learn about the sanatorium's history, to hear the stories of former patients and staff, and to experience the paranormal phenomena that are said to occur within its walls. The popularity of these tours is undeniable. Waverly Hills has been featured on numerous television shows and documentaries, and it has become a must-see destination for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts from around the world. The tours generate significant revenue, which is used to maintain the building and to fund further restoration efforts. However, the commercialization of Waverly Hills has also drawn criticism. Some argue that it is disrespectful to profit from a place where so many people suffered and died. They believe that the focus on paranormal activity trivializes the real-life tragedies that occurred within the sanatorium's walls and that it exploits the suffering of former patients and their families. The ethical considerations are complex. On one hand, the tours provide a valuable opportunity for education and historical preservation. They allow visitors to learn about the tuberculosis epidemic, the challenges faced by those who were afflicted, and the importance of public health. They also help to keep the memory of Waverly Hills alive, ensuring that its story is not forgotten. On the other hand, there is a risk of sensationalizing the sanatorium's history and of exploiting the suffering of former patients for entertainment purposes. The focus on ghost stories and paranormal phenomena can overshadow the real-life tragedies that occurred within the building, turning it into a macabre spectacle rather than a place of remembrance and reflection. The key to navigating these ethical considerations lies in striking a balance between entertainment and education, between attracting visitors and respecting the memory of those who suffered and died at Waverly Hills. The tours should be informative and respectful, providing visitors with a nuanced understanding of the sanatorium's history and the challenges faced by those who lived and worked there. It is also important to ensure that a portion of the revenue generated by the tours is used to support charitable causes that benefit those who are affected by tuberculosis and other respiratory diseases. This would be a fitting tribute to the memory of those who died at Waverly Hills and a way to give back to the Community. The debate over the commercialization of Waverly Hills raises broader questions about the ethics of tourism at sites of tragedy and suffering. How do we balance the need to preserve these places and to educate the public with the need to respect the memory of those who were affected? There are no easy answers, but it is a conversation that we must continue to have as we grapple with the complex legacy of the past. The current stewards of Waverly Hills must be mindful of this ethical tightrope walk as they continue to develop and present the site to the public. While the accounts of paranormal activity at Waverly Hills are compelling and widespread, it's important to acknowledge the skeptical perspectives that offer alternative explanations for the reported phenomena. These perspectives, rooted in science and critical thinking, provide a valuable counterpoint to the belief in ghosts and dark energy, suggesting that psychological, environmental, and perceptual factors may be at play. One of the most common skeptical explanations is psychological suggestibility. The power of suggestion can be incredibly strong, especially in environments that are already charged with emotion and anticipation. The history of Waverly Hills, its reputation for being haunted, and the stories that are shared during ghost tours can all create a powerful expectation of paranormal activity, making visitors more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli as evidence of ghosts or spirits. The phenomenon of pareidolia, the tendency to see meaningful patterns in random stimuli, can also contribute to the perception of paranormal activity. A shadow can be mistaken for an apparition, a creaking floorboard can be interpreted as a disembodied footstep, and a gust of wind can be perceived as a ghostly presence. The brain is wired to find patterns, and in an environment like Waverly Hills, it may be more likely to find patterns that confirm existing beliefs. Environmental factors can also play a significant role. The dilapidated condition of Waverly Hills, with its broken windows, crumbling walls, and decaying furniture, can create a sense of unease and anxiety. Drafts can cause sudden temperature fluctuations, which can be interpreted as cold spots. The echoing sounds of footsteps and voices can create a sense of isolation and vulnerability. Misinterpretations of natural phenomena are also common. The flickering of lights can be mistaken for ghostly apparitions, the rustling of leaves can be interpreted as whispers, and the movement of dust particles can be perceived as orbs of energy. In an environment like Waverly Hills, where the senses are heightened and the imagination is running wild, it's easy to misinterpret natural phenomena as evidence of the paranormal. Skeptics also point to the lack of definitive scientific evidence to support the existence of ghosts or dark energy. While many paranormal investigations have been conducted at Waverly Hills, the evidence captured is often subjective and open to interpretation. EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, can be difficult to verify, and photographic evidence of apparitions can often be explained by natural phenomena or digital manipulation. The placebo effect can also play a role in the reported paranormal experiences. If someone believes that they are going to experience paranormal activity, they may be more likely to do so, regardless of whether or not any actual paranormal phenomena are present. The expectation of experiencing something extraordinary can shape the perception of reality. It's important to note that these skeptical explanations do not necessarily invalidate the experiences of those who have reported paranormal activity at Waverly Hills. However, they provide a valuable alternative perspective, suggesting that psychological, environmental, and perceptual factors may be contributing to the reported phenomena. By considering these skeptical perspectives, we can gain a more nuanced understanding of the Waverly Hills phenomenon. We can appreciate the power of suggestion, the influence of environmental factors, and the limitations of human perception. We can also recognize that the belief in ghosts and dark energy is often rooted in a deep-seated desire to find meaning and connection in a world that can often seem chaotic and unpredictable. The existence of these alternate theories doesn't diminish the stories, but rather provides a fuller understanding of the human experience within the context of a place like Waverly Hills. Ultimately, the enduring appeal of Waverly Hills lies in its inherent mystery. Despite countless investigations, eyewitness accounts, and skeptical analyses, the question of whether or not it is truly haunted remains unanswered. The reported paranormal activity continues to defy easy explanation, leaving visitors and researchers alike to grapple with the unknown. It's important to acknowledge the subjective nature of paranormal experiences. What one person perceives as a ghostly apparition, another may dismiss as a trick of the light or a product of their imagination. The power of suggestion, the influence of environmental factors, and the limitations of human perception can all play a role in shaping our experiences, making it difficult to objectively verify the existence of ghosts or dark energy. However, even if the paranormal claims are ultimately unproven, the historical significance and emotional weight of Waverly Hills are undeniable. The sanatorium stands as a tangible reminder of the tuberculosis epidemic, a time when a deadly disease ravaged communities and when sanatoriums like Waverly Hills were the last hope for those afflicted. The stories of the patients who lived and died at Waverly Hills are stories of courage, resilience, and loss. They are stories of families torn apart by illness, of individuals struggling to survive in the face of overwhelming odds, and of doctors and nurses dedicating their lives to caring for the sick. These stories, even without the supernatural element, are powerful and moving. The body chute, as a symbol of the sanatorium's high death toll and the desperate measures taken to conceal the grim reality, carries a particularly heavy emotional weight. It is a reminder of the scale of the tragedy that unfolded within the walls of Waverly Hills and of the human cost of the tuberculosis epidemic. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it's impossible to deny the powerful emotions that are evoked by the body chute. The darkness, the dampness, and the knowledge of its grim purpose create a sense of unease and foreboding. The echoing sounds of footsteps and voices add to the sense of isolation and vulnerability. The enduring mystery of Waverly Hills and the body chute lies in the intersection of the historical and the paranormal, the tangible and the intangible. It is a place where the past is palpable, where the echoes of suffering and death continue to resonate. It is a place that challenges our understanding of reality, forcing us to confront the limits of human knowledge and the enduring power of the unknown. Perhaps the true haunting of Waverly Hills lies not in the presence of ghosts or dark energy, but in the memories of those who suffered and died there. The sanatorium stands as a testament to their struggles and their resilience, a reminder of the importance of compassion, empathy, and the pursuit of healing. The mystery endures, not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a somber and powerful reflection on the human condition. It is a place to remember, to reflect, and to honor those whose stories are forever etched into its walls. As we conclude our exploration of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, it's time to reflect on the key elements that contribute to its chilling reputation and enduring mystery, from its origins as a beacon of hope in the face of the devastating tuberculosis epidemic to its current status as a paranormal hotspot. Waverly Hills has undergone a remarkable transformation, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape and the collective imagination. We've journeyed back in time to understand the sheer scale of the White Plague and the desperate need for facilities like Waverly Hills. We've explored the brutal realities of life inside the sanatorium, the experimental treatments, the isolation, and the constant presence of death. We've delved into the legend of the body chute, its purpose, its physical description, and the sheer volume of bodies that passed through its dark confines. We've examined the numerous reports of paranormal activity throughout the sanatorium, with a particular focus on the experiences reported near the body chute, the disembodied screams, the unexplained shadows, the cold spots, and the feelings of intense dread. We've highlighted the investigations conducted by well-known ghost hunting teams, summarizing their findings and the evidence they captured. We've explored the theory that the concentrated suffering and death associated with the body chute has imbued it with a particularly potent negative energy, discussing the psychological impact of the space and its role in fueling paranormal beliefs. We've shared specific, compelling eyewitness accounts of paranormal encounters near the body chute, drawn from interviews, visitor testimonials, and historical records. We've chronicled the sanatorium's closure and abandonment, detailing its gradual decay and its subsequent transformation into a tourist attraction. We've addressed the ethical considerations of profiting from a place of immense suffering, Acknowledging the need to balance entertainment with education and respect. Finally, we've considered the skeptical perspectives, presenting alternative explanations for the reported paranormal activity, such as psychological suggestibility, environmental factors, and misinterpretations of natural phenomena. The enduring mystery of Waverly Hills lies in the tension between these competing perspectives. Is it truly haunted by the spirits of those who suffered and died within its walls? Or are the reported phenomena simply the product of overactive imaginations, fueled by the buildings? History and atmosphere. Ultimately, the answer is a matter of personal belief. Some will remain convinced that Waverly Hills is a place where the veil between worlds is thin, a place where the echoes of the past continue to resonate. Others will dismiss the paranormal claims as the product of psychological suggestibility and environmental factors. Regardless of your beliefs, it's impossible to deny the power of Waverly Hills to evoke strong emotions and to challenge our understanding of reality. The sanatorium stands as a tangible reminder of the tuberculosis epidemic, a time when a deadly disease ravaged communities and when sanatoriums like Waverly Hills were the last hope for those afflicted. The screams that are said to echo from the body chute, whether real or imagined, serve as a chilling reminder of the suffering and loss that occurred within the walls of Waverly Hills. They are a testament to the human cost of the tuberculosis epidemic and a reminder of the importance of compassion, empathy, and the pursuit of healing. As you contemplate the story of Waverly Hills, consider the possibility that some places are simply too steeped in tragedy to ever truly be at peace. Consider the power of the past to influence the present, and the enduring legacy of those who suffered and died within the walls of this imposing Gothic structure. Whether you believe in lingering spirits or not, the tragic history of Waverly Hills and the chilling legend of the body chute will undoubtedly leave a lasting impression. The echoes of the past, like whispers in the dark, invite us to remember, to reflect, and to honor those whose stories are forever intertwined with the haunting legacy of Waverly Hills.